Samson Jagoras was a Division I football player at CU, and soon became an early stage and key leader and eventually minority partner in Madwire/Marketing 360. He used his experience in that journey to power his own ventures and understanding with many ventures since. Darius Bell came to know Samson while he was a standout employee at Madwire and is a lifelong student of brand and marketing. Together, Samson and Darius have created the Pain to Profits podcast and are building a business education and brokerage platform for the next generation, Clearly Acquired. Their mission is to simplify business valuation and acquisition and skills development to allow a generation of independent business owners to transition to the next phase of life. They've got an event coming up in a few weeks after this podcast publishes, the Sales and Leads Summit on June 9th, which will be linked in the episode description. Both of these men have inspiring journeys of overcoming obstacles, and we share a conversation that's both philosophical and practical. Marketing trends, business and demographic opportunities, fear, love, pain, and addiction. It's all in this one, so please tune in and enjoy my conversation with Samson Jagoras and Darius Bell.
Let's have some fun.
Welcome to the Loco Experience Podcast. On this show, you'll get to know business and community leaders from all around Northern Colorado and beyond. Our guests share their stories, business stories, life stories, stories of triumph and of tragedy, and through it all, you'll be inspired and entertained. These conversations are real and raw, and no topics are off limits. So pop in a breath mint and get ready to meet our latest guest. Welcome back to the Loco Experience Podcast. I'm here today with Samson Jagoras,
Yes.
right? Pretty close.
Nailed it.
And Darius Bell. They are the founder and CEO and Chief Marketing Officer, respectively, of Clearly Acquired. Also the creative talent, I guess, behind the Pain to Profits podcast and all of the newsletters and events. I'm sure we'll talk about your upcoming event in June.
Yep.
And so let's just start by saying, Samson, what you been up to lately?
Well, man, a lot. I feel like what I've been up to is we are on a mission to just change the way that businesses get bought and sold for the lower middle market. And so, coming from the world of marketing and technology, that's where Darius and I know each other. Mm-hmm. We're part of a local company here called Madwire, if you guys are from Northern Colorado. So I ran strategy there for 9 years and learned a lot about small businesses as well as marketing and technology. And so been doing private equity for the past couple of years. I hit up Darius because once upon a time when we were working with 25,000 small business accounts, we had this conversation around how anybody can start a business, but very few people are successful at it, right? Majority of businesses fail in the first 2 years. And so less than 4% of businesses ever make it to $1 million in top line revenue.
Is that right?
And so I called Darius and said, hey man, I got this idea for a couple different things. One, this podcast where we can bring on entrepreneurs and actually share the wisdom in and around what it takes to go from pain of starting up to profits, right?
Yeah.
And so therein lies the name of the podcast. That's evolved into a newsletter and events platform. As entrepreneurs, we do a really terrible job of walking together and learning from each other, and we're heads down.
Let's speak for yourself.
Yeah.
I'm a local think tank guy, but whatever.
But, we do a really hard time.
It's a lonely place.
It's lonely, and you're grinding constantly, and you sometimes aren't spending enough time leveling up. And the market changes quick, right? Especially in the world of marketing and technology and what's evolving around us. As we kind of exit out of the last 100-year cycle, baby boomers are stepping down from the helm and millennials are stepping up as the largest segment of the workforce and the largest segment that's starting businesses and buying businesses. So long story short, that's, evolved into clearlyacquired.com, where we're building a, finance embedded tech solution and marketplace to help buyers and sellers come together by way of talent and technology. So we currently got 9 going on 10 M&A advisors on our team. We're in a sprint towards our MVP. We're aggregating public business listings from across the web.
Wow.
And we're pulling those into our database to make a better sourcing solution on the buy side. And obviously, buying and selling businesses is a collaborative experience, but none of the platforms or the ecosystems actually support that. And so that's what our goal is to do that.
Interesting. So. It seems like you spend a lot more time on your strategy than I have. Not to self-disparage.
Well, it's also, I think, what you see, it's like evolved very quickly in the last probably 30, 60 days, but, we've been grinding on this for 6-7 months, right?
Yeah,
so what's the the quote, if you got 10 hours to chop down a tree, spend 9 sharpening the axe.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's something we definitely subscribe to. And that's lessons learned, right? From, getting your teeth kicked in a couple times. As an entrepreneur, this isn't the first rodeo, right?
So I want to jump over to Darius. Darius, what was this a concept that you just immediately were ready to be like, yes, I want to be a part of it? Or tell me about your reaction.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, again, he mentioned at first we were talking about, hey, I have this idea. I heard the idea. I understood the idea. I see the idea. Let's sit down, put our heads together. Yeah, I'm in, So it was that simple. It wasn't complicated for me on my end. He's a dear friend, and I trust him, and I know the way he thinks and vets things. And, if there's something he's going to pursue, he thinks about it from multi directions, So it's not just some like, hey, I have this idea. I have this idea. Let's go. And, no, it's like he thinks about it. And so, he creates a space for me to think about it with him, and so that's what we do. And
so if I understand it right, Pain and Profits is like, to some extent, a marketing base camp for what ultimately will be kind of an integrated marketplace with access to capital and consulting for a business exchange.
Yeah,
that's kind of getting there.
Yeah, it's close.
Terminology might change, but yeah, it's associated, and the people who we serve through Clearly Acquired, they will find value in what we're doing with Paying the Profits.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so are you also, I think I sense that the size of businesses that are ready for acquisition is maybe going to be getting smaller than it has been in the past or something, or not necessarily.
I mean, I think there's a lot of the segment that we play in is what we would call the SME, the small to medium sized enterprise, to the lower middle market. So 1 to 5 million would be like the small to medium size.
Yeah.
Anything south of $1 million would be considered a Main Street business.
Yep.
And so those come with their own struggles to sell, right? Like, so think about like a dance studio doing $200,000 a year. You got a very specific owner operator who wants to buy that business. You're geographically constrained, right? Versus if we're taking a $22 million a year top line business that's electrical contractor, guy's 65 years old, 70 years old, and is ready to retire, and a guy from say Denver wants to come up and get market share in Northern Colorado, he can buy that business for $12.5 million, right? So how do we help that guy finance that deal, put that deal together, help that owner exit,
understand it's there?
Exactly, right? So, coming from the world of real estate private equity, which is what I've had been doing for quite a while, we drive down the street and everybody sees the same building, they see the same piece of dirt, everybody's chasing the same opportunity.
Nice silent sneeze. Impressive.
Perfected it over the years.
He might have given himself an aneurysm.
We don't do that around
here. But yeah, so the so helping the lower middle market and creating a more efficient part of that market. Anything from like $1 million to $50 million is pretty inefficient at the moment, and so that's the goal.
Got him. It's allergy season. It has been terrible.
I might have some Benadryl in there.
No, dude, I'm really going to be out.
Right. A shot of tequila and a couple Benadryls.
But, one of the things about Darius, and one of my skill sets is right people, right seat, right? And so Darius is just very skilled, knowledgeable, passionate about the world of marketing, strategy, content, and he can see kind of around the corner on how things are changing. And so very proactively, we've been building a strategy that's rooted in brand and content. And so, that's why I reached out to him initially, is because he just understands that. But we also align on our core values, of what we believe, right? We believe that, everything that we do belongs to the Lord and to God. And so we align on that message. We believe that, God wants us to be entrepreneurs and to make more impact and add value to the marketplace. And we can have a lot more impact from the market than we can ever from a stage on Sunday. And so, we're going to influence 10,000 people in our life, whether we like it or not. And we just choose to share what we feel is the good news to the marketplace because we feel like it's missing. And
so are you a overtly Christian organization, front facing, or more behind the scenes?
I've never really seen those things as two different things, right? It's just
Right.
the way that I operate, right?
I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just the way that I am, right? I mean, it's in our core values, right? Of entrepreneurialism is a gift from God. People are the creators of prosperity, right? And so,
Yeah, that's interesting too, because it's like, well, you're a Christian business. Well, what's an atheist business?
yeah,
You
what's
know?
that mean? Right?
Right.
What's a Buddhist business, right?
What does that mean? I don't understand. It's just it helps dictate how our moral compass and our business ethics roll, right?
I had a customer tell me one time, actually he saw my necklace and he's like, "Oh, are you a Christian, Curtis?" Which I suppose shame on me for him knowing me for over 2 years and
Not knowing
that. And I said, yeah, I'm not a super evangelist, but I have been for 10 years plus now or whatever. And he's like, well, I know a lot of Christians, but one thing I do know about business is that if somebody says you can trust me, I'm a Christian, I cannot trust that person.
Well, just because you put it on your card doesn't mean.
Yeah, and so I appreciate your notion of walk it as much as you talk it or more.
Yeah, I think if you have to say it, you're probably doing it wrong.
That was an old Margaret Thatcher quote when I think the BBC or NPR or whatever quit Twitter. Margaret Thatcher said back in the day, being a lady is a lot like being powerful. If you have to tell people that you are, then you are not.
Yep, that's right. Yeah.
Oh man, that can go many directions.
Yeah, that's true. So I think when you when you go to form a partnership, and I've experienced the negative end of not having a core value alignment with a partner and what that looks like, and it's tough, But one of the things that is rooted in what we believe is just extreme personal accountability in every way, shape, or form, and so. You need that, right? You need that trust to be able to say, hey, the lane as it relates to marketing, I'm very strategic and I have a lot of knowledge and expertise, but I can't simultaneously be the guy that's building the brand, leading the sales team, organizing all the people, handling legal contracts, raising money, doing all that stuff, and simultaneously be the guy that's waking up and going to sleep thinking about how we're going to generate lead flow, right?
So tell me about this group of M&A consultants or whatever that are attached or at least loosely attached to the organization. What skill sets are they bringing? Are they kind of initial investors that are willing to?
No, these are people who come from the profession of commercial real estate. Maybe they were business brokers in the past or advisors in the past. Come from the world of private equity, MBA grads. They have acumen in the space of in and around how deals come together, how to actually value businesses. And so, there's some technology platforms out there that are great. MicroAcquire, Flippa. They're focused on SaaS and they're focused on websites and blogs. But they're trying to cut the broker out. And so if you have let's just use an example, a trash roll-off company, right, that's doing $2 million a year top line. They have $2 million in assets, and they have $500,000 in seller discretionary earnings. That's a little more complicated than, say, a SaaS product, which is what's your monthly recurring revenue, right?
Right.
How many users do you have?
And what's the multiplier? What's the growth rate?
That's a lot easier to value, right? And so you need good advisors to help these sellers facilitate the transaction. They don't know what M&A attorneys to talk to. They don't know how to size the deal to be sold. They don't know how to value it. They don't know what due diligence documents they need to get in order, or how to even get their house in order, or maybe that they're not even aware that they run the risk of being faced with a very heavy earnout because they haven't actually removed themselves from the day-to-day as much as they think they should.
Is that your client ultimately, is the sellers of these businesses?
Yeah, correct. And the buyers.
Yes, but both.
Yeah, we're in
that's
the
who
world
you serve more than anything, though, is getting sellers' businesses ready to sell and then helping them accomplish that.
Yeah, it's actually both. I mean, in the world of brokering, they would call it building a market, right? So in the world of residential real estate, that market already exists, right? So you put a house on MLS and you just go to sleep, and then you get people showing up, right?
Yeah.
But when you go to sell
Especially
a business, when you go to sell a business, right, it's like you have 4 different types of buyers. You have financial buyers who are just interested in buying it as an asset. You got industry buyers who are looking for an acquisition, strategic buyers who want to expand their reach, and then owner operators, right? So how do you identify those people and build a campaign, sales and marketing campaign to go call, reach out, and market the business, right? And so That's like the brokering piece of it, but the rest of it is everything that comes together to getting it prepared to get us. It's not as simple as just like, I'm ready to sell. I took some staging photos and I plugged it on the MLS.
Sure.
It's a lot more complex.
No, especially when people are so integrated into their business, as oftentimes is the case.
Yeah, exactly. You spent 30, 40 years growing a business. That's hard.
Yeah.
Selling a business is even harder. You don't even know where to start.
So you guys work together at Madwire, I trust, then?
Yep.
Yeah, we did.
And,
I hired Darius.
Oh, way back when.
You
Yep.
know, we were sitting in with the outlets, and we were talking, and he was like, "Hey, dude, you should come try sales. Like, I've been talking about myself this whole time."
Yeah, he's a very good question asker.
Yeah. Good.
So I hired him and just saw the potential in him, and he came in and did sales, did marketing, then moved to brand and ran the podcast at Madwire for a while, and then broke off on his own and was doing his own thing.
Yeah.
When we reconvened,
So are we talking about Madwire, what happened there, and why so much talent fled and stuff, or is that better left for another conversation?
I mean,
it's not necessary.
I don't know. I don't know if talent necessarily fled, but I think it's just the ebbs and flows of growing and scaling a business.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's people can say what they. It's like I call it like it's like the armchair quarterbacks, right? Looks real good from over here, but
try it.
Very few people in this community can sit down and say that they scaled a business from 0 to 100 million in top line revenue, 2 acquisitions, and 600 employees. So say what you will, but nobody's ever been to the big show before.
Fair enough.
And the truth is, nobody's perfect either, right? Like, yes, there's consequences in decision making and leadership that it's obvious, right?
Yeah.
You can just look at your own life and realize you're not that different from the person.
No, that's what I was. All the worst things that have ever happened to me in my life, I did it to my damn self.
Yeah.
And maybe that's I'm probably living a blessed life if that's what you can say, right? Like there's a lot of people that is not true.
Yes.
Some terrible things have happened to them that weren't their fault.
Yep. The one thing I will say is I think very few people in life set out with bad intentions. And so here in our community, people can say what they want or think what they want, but there aren't people in that organization still to this day, even though we're not there, that very few people wake up saying, I'm going to go do ill today. Commit egregious acts upon people.
Do some mischief in this.
Yeah. Whether or not it happens or the outcomes are whatever people think they are. Very few people, set out every day to go do the worst.
I think what's unique too, though, and this is what nobody understands about the agency model. Like, we started out as a marketing agency, and so when you're sitting there and you're working with 30, 40, 50 accounts,
trying to figure out what they need. And
all business owners, you're learning a lot.
Total, concentration.
And you're also coming across people constantly where you're like, if this freaking guy can run a business, like I can too. And so, but you walk out of there with a ton of skills because I would venture to say that of the people listening to this, very few of them can confidently say that they can set up a Facebook campaign, an Instagram campaign, a LinkedIn campaign, an email marketing, run out marketing automation, social media campaigns, understand how to sell, right? Understand how to do all the things that
build
generally
product,
business owners have to hire somebody. And this is why you're seeing so many people from the marketing industry go off to be entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
Because they have an innate understanding of how marketing influences sales, product, service, growth, operations, and ultimately finance and the vision for the business. And so part of it is just the nature of the industry in general. People leave and go pursue entrepreneurship. You can't be around it that much. And
like using a local think tank as an example, we've got 2 near full-time employees. One's the marketing manager, one's kind of the digital manager, website, podcast producer. And like to expect 1 or 1.5 marketing people to be able to cover all the things and be experts at all the different things. And so that's why it's tempting to hire an agency, right?
Yep.
But then, that rep has got 30 or 40 or 50 businesses that they're trying to tap all the balloons and keep them off the ground and whatever. And so that's hard too, but they do at least get concentrated knowledge.
100%. You drink from the fire hose, that's for sure. And that's part of why we went down the route while we were there of solving by way of tech, right?
Right.
Like, how do you do what everybody's seeing happen right now? Leverage AI in order to let one person be able to have more bandwidth because, we don't have infinite bandwidth. And so it's definitely a challenge. It's a lot to know, to do, to handle, to manage. This guy knows very, very well. He was.
You were a
he
man
had-
of many hats there, sounds like.
Yeah, he managed 40 accounts before. He knows what that feels like.
Yeah, I had 118. I'm pretty sure, but not all of them obviously were doing it, but
Yeah,
between
like your hosting and
Yeah,
website and
yeah. So
118 accounts. Yeah. So
yeah, I mean,
that's a lot.
opinions. Just opinions and experience. There's a difference between opinion and experience.
Well, it's hard. Do you know about Vistage? Have you been
Yeah,
around
I
peer
know
advisory?
this.
You've heard about it.
I've never been a part of it, but
So Vistage has got a very similar model, but they really prefer that their chairs, what they call them, have at least 2, maybe 3 groups of up to 16 members. And we generally have our facilitators do one group of 12. And one of the reasons that I think I've been able to attract such great facilitators is because maintaining 45 relationships, in-depth, it's hard. Like, that's too much for most people.
unless you're doing it full time, right?
Right, and
even
that's
then.
the thing. You don't really want to work full time if you're really well qualified and you don't really need a job. Why would you want to work full time and struggle at it?
Yeah. Exactly.
And so I've kind of had a shift of my mentality. Like, that's really a strategic advantage for me and Loco Think Tank is I don't ask our facilitators to try to have 45 relationships. You can have
that's smart.
10.
Yeah.
And really enjoy those 10 instead of really barely scratching the surface of 40.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Smart.
And I don't know if I'm thinking about the same thing from a marketing standpoint or whatever we focus on, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's the hardest part of, scaling a business is hard, and there's a difference between growing and scaling, and so sometimes you need to add people in order to grow, but you're actually not getting more efficient. Your top line is going up, but you're not getting more profitable. In fact, you're just carrying more FICA, you're carrying more insurance, you're carrying more things
Right.
that actually start to drag the bottom line. And yeah, sometimes it takes a while before you figure that out. And when you get to that size and scale, you have that many people. Sometimes
it doesn't adjust easily.
It doesn't adjust. It's like the ship gets bigger, but then when you realize you've made the mistake, it's like, oh man, we got to move quick, because if not, you start bleeding out the back end. And so,
Right.
So it's just. But candidly, for me, it was the greatest experience ever because I got to grow up as an entrepreneur inside of a fast-growing company, right? So, you build 5 departments, you hire north of 400 people, you get a lot of experience real quick.
So let's talk about some of the trends. Maybe I'll get you back on the stage a little more, Darius. What are those around the corner trends in marketing? What are the things that you guys are doing to differentiate and get attention, but also that every small business, almost I would say over 3/4 of our listeners are active small business owners. Like, what are they not doing that they need to be thinking about?
I don't generally speak on trends a whole lot just because they change fast and don't chase trends. But I think the one thing that people need to accept if you're in business and as it relates to marketing, communications, anything that involves your message is you got to communicate more. And by communicate more, I don't necessarily mean the running of advertisement, not ads, but I think you have to get comfortable accepting that there are people within my organization that have thoughts and opinions and feel, and they're trying and they're learning and they're developing skills, and that needs to be the form of communication, So, for example, one of the things we're doing with Clearly, people will see this, that over the next year, we have a plan in place to where I think people are going to be like, wow, these guys are communicating a lot.
Yeah.
And the thing is because it's necessary, because what's happening on the macro stage, in my opinion, is our consumers are being driven to evaluate companies, service and product providers based on values more than they were 7 years ago, 10 years ago, 15 years ago. You have a public, in a macro sense, just keep it within the states. You have people longing for trust. We have trust. Trust is at an all-time low. Yeah. Across so many different sectors.
Just came back from the BBB Torch Awards.
Right.
Better Business Bureau.
Yeah. Yeah. So like so these indicators of trust, the empowerment of technology, citizen journalism, so many different things. And so like you have this technology piece, you have this social, philosophical sort of crisis of leadership and all these things. And all that points to is that businesses have to be willing to say, here's who we are, here's what we think, here's what our people are up to, here's what we're passionate about.
Here's some real stories where we made a difference.
Here's
in our
what we don't
customers'
like.
lives,
Yeah, here's
whatever.
what we don't like. Here's what we're not fans of this. We're fans of this. This is what John is doing. This is what Susie is doing.
Do you risk, like sometimes when people communicate with me too much, I unsubscribe.
See, but you're thinking about permission marketing, right? So if we connect, so yes, if I start emailing you without permission every single day, like, yes, super annoying. But if you knew what you were signing up for,
Right.
if you decided to connect with me and follow me on social, and I post content,
Yeah.
right? So here's the stat that'll blow your mind that 90% of the people who are on social media are just consuming. 9% are engaging in the comments, and only 1% are creating. So if you want to be a top 1% producer, then you better do what the top 1% are doing. Everybody's worried about, I'm going to get judged by the 9%. But what they don't realize is people don't engage. And so they won't actually experience the
My
result.
mom is just a lurker. She never comments. She never likes. She never
They
does
won't
nothing.
experience the result, though, until they show up to the meetup and all of a sudden they go, Kurt, I love your content. And you're like, this guy never likes any of the stuff that I put out. It's because they are just consuming.
Yeah.
And so what marketing has evolved to over the last 10 years is everybody's looking for the shortcut hack on how they can get the quickest from point A to
Conversion.
point B. But they're forgetting the long game. They're not making the investment in building up their brand by way of content and telling a story about what you believe and what you know. Trust is built on the back of 4 things: integrity, intent, capability, and results. 90% of the research process is done before the customer ever speaks with you. So there's a conversation happening about your business that you don't get to participate in unless, of course, you're creating content. And if you're creating content, then you get to be a part of the conversation. They're not going to gauge. They're not going to tell you it's happening. But it will affect persuasion when you get on that meeting or that call. They trust you more.
Are you even going to create content for like the sellers of these businesses and stuff to help them
Potentially, business is
market
tough.
that?
It's discreet, right?
Yeah.
So you got to be discreet. But we are leveraging our employees. I'll let him talk on that a little bit.
I was going to say, just to go back to
Yeah,
what we were
please.
saying,
Sorry, I didn't mean to. I'm a squirrel chaser.
when I'm saying when I'm saying like communicate more, I'm not just saying like do more. What I'm saying is, what I'm actually implying is that you're capable. Humans are complex creatures, yet we're also kind of simple at the same time, right? But let's just say this is Random Podcast Inc., right?
Yeah.
Typically, you should probably be working and hiring and bringing people into your organization who you do align with based on your core values and those types of things. You shouldn't be bringing people into your organization who are radically on the other side of the spectrum. That's a recipe for disaster.
Okay.
But the people that you bring into your organization and the people who represent your organization, they have thoughts, they have opinions, they have feelings. They're doing things. They have side hustles and projects and things that are motivating them and key relationships and all these things.
Fair.
And all you have to do to oversimplify it is say, it's okay for you to share what you're doing. It's okay for you to share what you think. I'm not worried about how it's going to impact the company. I'm not, right now it's part of why people don't create content is because they have to worry about the consequences. They have to worry about,
What's my boss?
what's my boss going to say?
Yeah.
But if you look at, for example, like if you look at Gmail is the byproduct of employees being let loose to do what they want to do. Gmail.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yep. Google had, what do they call that?
I don't remember the term.
But basically they just said, hey, you get a whole day to just create whatever you want. And that's where Gmail was born.
Really?
A couple engineers were like, hey,
Before that, Hotmail existed in Yahoo, but what's different about Gmail?
But that's an awareness. But from the Google standpoint, that's an awareness that our people who work within our company, based on the kind of people that they are, based on their skill sets and their values, more than likely, they like to do other things. So why won't we let them why wouldn't we support them doing other things? Right? So why wouldn't we support something that they're passionate about?
We always say,
so that's when we say communicate more, it's like you're already communicating. First of all, you're communicating with your coworkers. I hate this job. Well, maybe don't go post that.
Well,
But
I
the
don't
point
say
is,
that,
you know
but
what I'm saying? It's like you technology has enabled us to communicate in ways we've never been able to. You don't have to get in front of the camera. You don't have to dance on TikTok. You don't have to. He writes 10 posts a day on LinkedIn. And it's like that's his lane. He just is just shining there, right? And
Yeah.
so. But he's not on TikTok doing this or making, trying to be something.
Ain't nobody wants
Be
to
you.
Right.
Be you and more of it.
Yeah.
Whether
Yeah.
it's you or the company or some of your
Your
consultants or advisors.
But the reason
Your vibe attracts your tribe, right?
Yeah.
And so you got to be creating content. And small business owners are missing the mark because they're missing out on the fact that it's a recruiting tool. People want to work for people that they know, like, and trust.
Mm-hmm.
It's a customer attraction tool, right? It's a brand tool, right? If there's conversations happening about you, then that you can't be privy to, then you need to be creating content that shows up. And guess what? There's two types of businesses: those that have bad reviews and those that will. And if you don't have any bad reviews, then you just haven't done much yet. So the only thing
I
you
don't
can,
have any bad reviews yet.
you can control your reputation, right? You can get out there and control your reputation by telling the narrative and the story, because you don't. 87% of
Even
your,
if you get a few bad reviews, then it doesn't
Correct.
tell the story.
87% of your happy customers are willing to share good reviews about you, but nobody ever asks. Your upset customers, you don't got to ask them. They'll gladly go tell the world plus 20 of their friends, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you look at it just from a cultural perspective. Like, people are longing for trust, right? Then you have the other side where people are like, I'm afraid of saying something or being a certain way because of the consequences. But 1 + 1 = 2. So that means that in the middle of that, it's the brave individuals who are willing to just say, like, hey, here's what I think. Here's my take on this. I had this idea. I did this. That are going to be positioned to do whatever they want to do, because the people who are saying, I'm longing for something to trust. Hey, I see that guy over there who's doing something that.
So like Tucker Carlson is what I feel like you're talking about. Just
So,
kidding.
I mean,
I'm
exactly.
teasing.
He's a perfect picture.
Well,
Perfect.
that's why he attracted such a big following, is people are like, I can trust what Tucker tells me.
He's no BS, man. He's gonna be on. And so we think, just to sum it all up, put a little bow on this, we think that creators, people who create content, will be the winners
Facts.
in the next era of business, and those that do not will be left behind. I mean, if you guys aren't following what is called or known as SMB Twitter, it's literally small business owners on Twitter who are building massive followings.
Yeah,
They're making more money from Twitter and then building their brand than they are from running their business.
Interesting.
And it's leading to acquisition opportunities. It's leading to recruiting, and people want to come work for those people. It's leading to brand and trust.
Yeah.
Are these online businesses or
No,
whatever?
we're talking HVAC,
Yeah, many. It's a
storage
spectrum,
facilities.
Yeah.
I mean, there's some big accounts.
I've noticed a few people that have like these weird followings, and even I follow this YouTube channel called SRK Cycles, and he was a motorcycle broker up in Michigan somewhere or something like that, and just would do like road test reviews on the different bikes that he picked up on the auction or whatever. And this is my first time on the Honda Rune.
Yep.
It's balls out, but doing all these really good videos. And now he does bikes and beards, and I think he's developed basically kind of a YouTube influencer personality point where he doesn't want to screw around with brokering motorcycles anymore.
Yeah.
He doesn't.
Doesn't have to.
And not saying you need to go be an influencer too. I don't want to deter people
Yeah,
from
yeah.
that, but I just think that.
But he built such a brand. Like, he got his brokerage so big that he kind of had a brand after that.
Well, you remember back in the early 2000s, right? And call it 2008, 2009. It was all about SEO, search engine optimization, right? Content is the new SEO. All the algorithms are favoring the real-time content. They're favoring authority. They're favoring people who have their own original thought about what they're posting.
Does podcasts help in that space?
Yeah,
Is that
100%.
That's content.
It's
That's
just
why you're
another
doing
form.
it.
It's another
Well,
form.
100%. Yeah, absolutely. But not everyone needs to create a podcast. I mean,
Yeah.
like,
Well, it
pick
should be authentic to you or whatever.
pick a platform and start there, just get good. But I think that there's no way to get better at it than just to do it.
Yeah, absolutely. And the future is just, I mean, he said it. If you're not creating, you're left behind. And it's not even that, it's just the truth. It's just the truth because, again, like so the internet, social media, all these things, this technology that we are so dependent upon is built ultimately for decentralization.
Sure.
So what that means is you're funneling down into small groups and communities. So it's not these centralized figures anymore, these
Right.
big pillar institutions. So what that means is that if you want to survive, then you're gonna have to share.
Yeah, and have distinct
who
channels.
is my tribe? Who's my community? What are we for?
Interesting.
You know, like it's just gonna be that way.
Well, we talked about that trust meter kind of stuff, and the biggest institutions
Right.
are the ones that are trusted the least.
100%.
Almost. Business has the most trust compared to government or academia or different things.
You got it. I mean, we
Even
can go down a rabbit hole.
science.
We watched the Super Bowl, and we were just talking about how the traditional media just missed it.
Yeah.
Because
Yes, big time.
if they actually knew their audience, you know what their audience was doing at the commercial break? They were scrolling on their phone. And so if they
They were
were
doing it
actually doing
during
a
the
better
game.
job of leveraging micro-influencers who had their audience's attention during that time period, their money would have went probably
Yep.
a million times further. But they're not thinking that way because they don't understand the medium. The game has changed. And so you can keep shoving a square peg in a round hole. And that's fine. But the micro-influencers, like he was saying, it's about distributed
Interesting.
audience. So and to kind of bring it back full circle to like how we think about content in the business, these baby boomers, they've been running their business since they've been at the helm since like 1983, right?
Right.
And so if it isn't broke, don't fix it. Well, guess what? 1983,
Yeah.
the internet came about. 2000, the first online job came online. And so the millennial generation, who's now the largest segment of the market, who's now buying these businesses, is stepping in and adding technology,
Right.
brand,
Yep.
marketing, content, systems, processes, hiring, recruiting, training.
Yeah.
They're- So, I can't tell you how many times I sit down with boomer-owned businesses, or at least like industries that tend to lean toward more boomers, like the trades, and they'll
Yep.
say, "Oh man, I
Yep.
just can't find any good people." And I go, "Tell me about your recruiting strategy." And they're like, "Oh, well, we have a page on our site." I'm like, "No.
Right.
How are you attracting them the same way you would attract a customer? Are you telling a story? Are they excited to come to work for you?"
Well, and you've probably met some too that we had someone talk to us about think tank membership, and they were trying to bring their family's business into the next level. They weren't yet managing it, but they needed a website, they needed a Facebook page. It was a trades business.
Yep.
And yet they had enough long-term clients and stuff that it was actually not a financially unsuccessful business.
Right.
They just hadn't invested in these things that will keep it that way.
Yeah. What got you there won't keep you there. Exactly.
Yeah, no, that's definitely a part of the thing. I want to talk about because we're going to talk about your guys' journeys and try to do that simultaneous here a little bit, because I know they're separate journeys largely until Madwire, but this summit you guys have coming up, or sales and leads?
Sales and leads. Yep.
Sales and leads summit? Sales and leads something?
Yeah. I mean,
You said it.
Okay, I thought so. I was just making sure.
Yeah, it's all about what we're talking about right now, right? It's about the new era of selling and brand building and how it's changing and how everybody's not prepared for it
Yeah.
and what it means to actually build a brand. A brand's not a logo and a tagline anymore, right? It's beyond brand. So Darius will be speaking about beyond brand. We'll talk about raw and real authenticity with Matt Schaup, who's a local entrepreneur in
Nice.
North Colorado.
Yep.
M&E Painting, also has a leadership
Yeah, he was in the pod a few months
training
ago.
coaching. Yep. And then we got actually one of my other business partners in our capital group. He is still a lieutenant commander in the Navy at the highest level for explosive ordnance and defense. And he's trained in strategy and war. So he's going to actually be talking about leading sales teams through uncertainty and what that actually looks like and what that
Right.
means. And then we got Andy Neary, who's actually one of our portfolio
Oh, yeah.
companies.
Baseball guy.
Baseball guy, runs a game called Complete Game runs a company called Complete Game Consulting, working specifically with benefits advisors and insurance producers on how to actually leverage content and modern day sales techniques
In those niches, especially,
yeah.
or whatever.
just in general. I mean,
Yeah.
the stuff that he coaches is not it's
He
agnostic.
has a niche, but
But the
his
business
stuff
that
is
he's
the
building,
best.
he comes from that space, but
Cool.
it's relevant to everybody. And so, yeah, I mean, if you want to level up on your sales and leads and marketing strategy, then
and how do people find that?
yep, right.
They can find it on your website.
The
So
link on
you can find it through our social profiles,
Okay.
but it's on Eventbrite. So if you happen to be on Eventbrite, our main page is on Eventbrite. You can go there and search it.
Okay. Cool. And it's just the Pain to Profit Summits, and in June? No.
June 9th. Yeah,
June
Friday,
9th.
June 9th, half
Okay.
day. It's going to be great. Entrepreneurs, salespeople, their teams, food, networking,
Yeah.
right here in Northern Colorado.
All the good stuff.
Yeah, it's going to be great.
Yeah,
Cool.
it's interesting as we're
I'll make
talking.
sure this comes out. I'm going to have to bump you ahead of a few people, but I'll get you out before
Sorry.
this.
Thanks, Karen.
You can just drop the clip too. You know,
Maybe. Yeah, right.
clip. It's interesting as we're talking about what we're just talking about. I want to make sure I share this. I keep thinking about. Are you familiar with? If I was to say, what's the hottest sports drink in the world right now? Do you know what it would be?
Not necessarily. I think there's that kill water or something like that, but it's just water. I think that is like the
Liquid Death. You mean?
Liquid Death.
Okay.
Yeah,
So that's water. But the hottest sports drink in the world right now is a drink called Prime.
Oh yeah, I saw it.
Prime.
A little bit. I haven't had one yet.
It's the creators of Prime are two young men in their late 20s, who between the two of them have followings of probably 40 million people,
Okay.
and they're going to overtake Gatorade,
No shit.
that has millions and millions of dollars to spend in
Right,
ad-
and as part of
ad
Coca-Cola
and
Company,
strategy and everything. They're going to overtake. They're now the official sports drink of the UFC.
Yep. Gatorade's about to become the next blockbuster.
Right.
really.
Yeah.
But the point is, how did they do that? Oh, they made content. Well, they made content about whatever they felt like.
They built
But
an audience that know, liked, and trust them. Their vibe attracts your tribe.
Yeah.
And when you have an audience, you can sell whatever you want into.
Like that, they could.
Oh, I have
They
an
could make
idea.
soap.
I have an idea.
or whatever.
I really want to create a sports drink and see if we can do this. Would you guys be for that?
Right.
Yeah, you got 40 million people like, yeah, we'll do it.
Right.
You know?
Well, it's kind of like Rogan being part of On It,
Right.
right? Like
Right.
with Rogan's voice advertising On It, sell the shit out of whatever he wants.
Mr. Beast
Well,
chocolate.
and it's because his
Yeah,
audience, right?
right.
His audience, Rogan's audience, knows how serious he takes it.
Yep. Yep.
His values.
Yep.
So if he supports On It, we're going to be on it. You know,
Right. Right. If he
You
thinks
know?
Alpha Brain is good shit,
we're going to try it.
he probably gets a higher premium than a lot of podcasts, even on a per download, because his authenticity factor is higher, kind of.
And that's why he's winning. It's because your vibe attracts your tribe.
Right.
Raw and real wins, right? And so
Yeah.
And I don't mean to belabor it, but I think it's just important for your listeners, being fellow entrepreneurs and business-minded people, to understand that, you know, we're talking about content, we're talking about all these things, but it's just
And how do you do that? Not to shift it, kind of, but like it's online. But a lot of these companies that you guys are talking about are delivering goods and services locally. You know, they're laundromats, or they're trucking companies, or they're
I'll give you an example.
HVAC.
I'll give you an example. I have one of the businesses that I own is a private training facility. We have 16 trainers. We got 8,000 square feet, and the average boutique gym in our space probably does 400,000. We'll clear 1.2 million. How do we do that? We barely spend any money on paid media. How do we do that? Every single one of our employees, trainers, has a scorecard metric to create a certain amount of content, to host a certain number of events,
Yeah.
and to get out in the community and do a certain amount of FaceTime in order to build their personal platform. And we communicate to them
And if
that
they don't want to do that, then this isn't the gym for you.
we communicate to them that the gym is simply a platform. You are actually the product. You're the brand. They are buying you. They're not buying us. But we've hired you because you align with our core values. So we trust that you can go out and represent the brand well, right? And so that's how you do it. People are overthinking it. Like our average customer does, at a gym like that, person won't drive further than 7 to 10 miles. So we're dominating 7 to 10 miles.
Obviously, yeah.
Right? So you can do that as an HVAC contractor. You can do that as a plumber. You can do it as a roofer. You can do it as a boutique shop. You know, it's the problem is people treat it like an event. Like, oh, I created content a couple times this week and it didn't work.
Yeah.
Compared to what? That's like going to the gym a couple times and be like, I don't have a 6-pack yet.
yeah.
And I don't.
You know, one of the things we talk about often is how there are no rules when it comes to creating. Like, I was just thinking in my mind, this may not even be a great idea, but I'm like, if Loco Think Tank wanted to grow, having more chapters with some of the best, you know, business facilitators there are, I'd take all my facilitators and I'd go walking through the neighborhoods where the business people are more likely to live. And I'm connecting with families and people and telling them what we're doing. I didn't even create a piece of content. I'm just going out to show people, hey, I'm communicating. We're here.
Yeah.
And you're probably going to stumble upon 5 people that have built some significant businesses in somewhere in this state that you didn't know, that you weren't going to reach with an ad. You weren't going to reach by, some other
Yeah,
route.
right.
But the point
Yeah.
is, like, there's no rules. It's just go and try to help somebody. Go and try to encourage somebody. Go and try to educate somebody. Go and try to make someone laugh. Go and try to be curious with someone and get their input on an idea you had. Go and, I don't know, say, hey, I'm learning this. It doesn't
So
matter.
yesterday morning, I went to the Good Samaritans home just around the corner from your guys' gym there and whatnot, and I spoke to the men's breakfast on invitation from somebody that I met 5 years ago, and they like Loco Think Tank and stuff, and I'm telling this group of 25, it's independent living, so they're pretty high functioning, you know, and strong handshakes on all of them and stuff, and tell them about Loco and this and that, and halfway into it, through it, the guy sitting just to my right was like, "Oh, my son has the Kirk Eye Center in Loveland." And I was like, well, he might want to be a member, especially if he's thinking about expansion and things like that. And he's like, he is.
Yeah,
I was like, oh, well, good, And I didn't think I was going to pull any tail from that group, but I was doing it, because I was invited to, and I was serving, and I thought it would be fun and useful. Yep. And boom, maybe I've got a good prospect. 2 guys took my cards afterward, not including him. So who knows?
Go. Yeah, and last thing, and then we can kind of move on because we're beating this dead horse. But
it's cool.
We're so passionate. We're just so passionate about it, and
and
this whole pod is about helping small businesses, right? And so there's nothing. I've been in that space for over 10 years, working specifically with small businesses, and nobody's more passionate about that than I am, I think. And but you are the Yoda to somebody else's Luke Skywalker story, and so. A lot of the content that people do try to create is very self-serving, right? And so, hey, if you're looking to sell your home, give me a call, right? It's like, well, who's that for, right? So you got to add value to the marketplace, and that's the easiest way to avoid, feeling kind of grimy when you're creating content, right?
Yeah.
So
Takes the pressure off.
Yeah, don't be selfish. Add value. Here's what worked for me.
Yeah.
That's what we always say, right?
I dig it.
Yeah.
We're going to take a short break and then come back and hit the journey a little more.
Let's do it.
Right, sure. The Loco Experience is sponsored by InMotion, providing next-day delivery for local businesses. If you need anything delivered in northern Colorado, InMotion's flat-fee service is a great resource for your business. Delivering from the Wyoming border to Denver and anywhere in between, their clients range from small breweries to real estate companies. InMotion can deliver almost anything you can imagine. If this fits a need for your business, contact InMotion directly by emailing them at inmotionnoco@gmail.com. That's INMOTIONNOCO@gmail.com, and mention you heard it on the Loco Experience. So this is about the time we jump in the time machine and we go back to kindergarten today. Samson, where were you in kindergarten?
Kindergarten, I went to a little tiny Catholic school called Holy Family.
Okay.
And
this is where?
This is in Los Angeles, California.
Okay.
It's actually in South Pasadena, if you know where the Rose Bowl is.
Ish, yeah.
Yeah, close to the Rose Bowl. So
cool.
And fast forward to about 4th grade, I ended up going out of school and homeschooling.
Oh.
And homeschooled from my 4th grade year through my 9th grade year.
Wow.
And
all in California still?
All in California, yep. My parents thought that I could just get a better education, which they were right. Taught me to be a self-starter.
Yeah.
Taught me to be an independent thinker. I always say for the love of skateboarding, I was always trying to get my school done as quickly as I possibly could so I could skate as much as I wanted to. And,
okay.
while most kids were in school, I was getting done with school at like 12 o'clock. So I could skate for 4 hours.
People asking you at the park, why are you here this afternoon?
Just working on my kickflips.
Class?
Okay. And
what was your family dynamic, if you don't mind?
Yeah, my parents were married. My parents have been married for, going 40 years now.
Siblings? Were they working entrepreneurs?
Yeah, not entrepreneurs. I mean, my dad tried many times to start his own thing. He was a carpenter.
Okay.
And never really broke past sole proprietorship.
Yep.
Because he's truly a craftsman. He needed somebody like me who was more business-minded and sales-minded to go get the work and facilitate the work. But he had great relationships, grew up in Los Angeles. My dad is a big part of my story. When he was 13 years old, his mom died and his dad walked out.
Oh, wow.
So he's been riding solo since he was 13 years old. And so, he did the best that he possibly could and is as loyal as they possibly come. And taught me about that, right, of just what work ethic looks like. Didn't have much to teach me on the business acumen side. I had to kind of go learn that. But between homeschooling, seeing his work ethic, I learned a lot about just the grit that it takes to get stuff done.
Yeah.
When I turned about 14, I found football. Fell in love with football, changed my life. It was all I wanted.
Good running back style?
I was a linebacker, fullback.
Linebacker, okay, fullback, yep.
Linebacker, fullback. And so I went to was a great high school football player, ended up going to the Western New Mexico University, which is a D2. Heading into my sophomore season, I decided that I wasn't happy, took the walk-on at CU, and thankfully a year later got put back on scholarship.
Oh, wow.
And so I ended up switching to fullback when I got to CU and got to play under Gary Barnett and then Dan Hawkins.
Oh.
And then
I probably didn't see you play football there.
Probably, yeah.
I've watched a few games here and there. Usually I'm cheering against CU, but whatever. Before we get too far into your journey, can we shift it over to Darius? When you were a kindergartner, where were you at?
I don't. What age is kindergarten? 5 or 6?
Like 5 or 6, yeah. 5 mostly.
So.
Yeah, or tell me what was your family dynamic?
Kindergarten. I don't know the school I was at. I feel like I can't remember.
Because you moved around a lot. Your family did, or?
I did move around a decent amount. Family dynamic, unstable, and dysfunctional.
Sorry.
So
where were you?
What
part of the country?
I was in Buffalo, New York.
Okay.
So I'm originally from Buffalo, New York.
All right.
And I lived in Buffalo, New York until I was a sophomore in high school.
Okay.
And I moved out of Buffalo because my mother passed away my freshman year of high school, and didn't know my pops. And
wow.
And my mom, through I think God's grace, made a deal with my brother that basically said, I'm dying. I didn't know this, but she said, I'm dying.
Your brother's older, I guess.
Yeah. So it's part of a
I want to hear the rest of that. I'm dying.
Well, it's interesting. And I think about it when we're talking about like life stories. I'm like, I don't know if I've thought about like how much I want to divulge about like some of those aspects.
So share what
of
you
my
want to
life.
share, honestly.
But
I think that's part of what. I mean, Samson just shared about his dad and his story, and that's part of what makes you really dynamic is that self-sufficiency too.
Yeah. So Well, yes. So my parents, both of my parents were, they battled substance abuse, like many parents in the inner city in the 80s and 90s.
2000s.
2000s today. Now it's the kids, right? But so
sorry
parents were,
I mean, it's just real.
It's just life, you know what I mean? Like,
what you and your brother?
No, so my sibling breakdown works out like this. I have siblings from both of my parents, but I'm the only one from the both of them.
Okay.
And I have 2 siblings from my mother who are both 25 years older than me.
Oh.
And so my mom had me
when she was like 40 or
41.
Wow.
Yeah. With my father, and then he had 2 other daughters, my sisters, with another woman.
Yeah.
And so, So anyways, a little bit dysfunctional just based on when you're an addict, you're unstable.
Yeah.
What can you, nothing's stable. Therefore, if you have dependents, which me and my siblings and other people were, you don't have stability. So, for me, like I said, I was in Buffalo until my sophomore year. And then I moved to Minneapolis to live with my older brother. And was there for a little bit of time, and then I took a trip back to Buffalo.
He had gotten there somehow.
So he was in the military.
Okay.
And throughout the years, he just had a desire to get out of Buffalo. Buffalo can be, it's like your typical inner city or impoverished area where those type of areas tend to be, they tend to suck you in. Right?
Yeah.
Keep you there. You don't have options.
Even North Dakota, even though it was,
it doesn't matter.
It's rural, but it sucks you in. Nobody really
stories.
thinks that they can leave there and be successful somewhere else. Really.
Yeah, where there is lack, you typically lack you think you lack options, right?
Yeah.
So it doesn't matter if it's North Dakota or North Michigan, whatever, or East Bronx. It doesn't matter. Like
West Denver.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. Black, white, whatever, right? It's just part of. It's what comes by way of economics and culture and stuff. And so, anyways, moved to Minnesota, and then my brother moved us to a place called Farmington, Minnesota, which
down southwest, right?
Down south of Minneapolis.
Yeah.
but it's Farmington. Farmington stands for farm town.
Like there's
farming
a
town.
pork processing plant and a bunch of soybean farmers and
Yeah,
whatever.
and it was cool. It was a bit of a culture shock. But,
Oh, sure.
But my best friend, two of my best friends to this day, two of my oldest, dearest friends, they came by way of my time in that place.
Yeah.
And
I lived in Worthington for a little while, which was probably about 150 miles west of Farmington.
Yeah.
That's why you know it so well.
Right, totally.
Yeah, and so that was life, and then I fancied myself going to a little community college to, follow a girl and try to play some sports. And
What was your sport?
Basketball.
Yeah.
And then
He's also a Golden Gloves boxer. Don't.
Oh, is that right?
yeah,
So you don't want to tussle after this?
I have no interest in tussling at all. I will run away before I try to fight somebody.
Yeah.
I nothing to do with that. But fighting is unforgiving.
But at that time, anyway, you did.
And so went to college, but my story gets a little messy in college. So my parents were addicts, so I stayed away from drugs and alcohol.
Yeah.
In college, I tried drugs and alcohol, and it sent me into an absolute spiral. And I didn't come out of that spiral until 2012 when I got saved and started walking with Jesus.
When did you start the spiral?
That would be 2008.
Oh, wow.
2008, and so 2007 technically, because by that fall 2007.
Wow.
So 5 years of just being
Party
unstable.
lifestyle and
Unstable.
whatever. Were you still a college student and stuff?
No.
Oh.
I ruined that opportunity very quickly. I wasn't prepared to be in that environment. I wasn't prepared for the autonomy.
Yeah.
A lot of people want autonomy, but autonomy means, the word actually means self-law. And you can desire autonomy, but if you don't...
Yeah, that's not freedom. That's not just like sprayed everywhere.
It's not freedom. And what it actually requires is judgment. You need judgment.
Yeah.
In order to have a law, you need to be able to have some judicial people that can handle that, right? And so if you're going to be a law unto yourself, you need to be virtuous. You need to accurately have discernment and do all these things. I wasn't prepared for that. I wasn't prepared for that, so messed up my life, got derailed, and Jesus came and put it back on track.
I want to come back to the faith journey a little bit, but I think it might be served to, actually, let's just stay here for a minute.
That's good.
Tell me about what your circumstances were, who found you, other than Jesus. Was there an encourager, somebody that believed in you when you didn't believe in yourself?
Yeah, I call him my brother. His name's Adam.
Okay.
So I met him my first day in Farmington.
Oh.
So check this out. So I get to Farmington High School. I get to Farmington Middle School at the time. It's technically, so what happened is I got put back a grade, even though I was in high school. I was a sophomore in New York. When I got to Minnesota, I got put back.
In the middle school, and their middle school went through 9th grade.
Yeah. Even though in New York, high school starts at 9th grade.
Right. Same as where I'm from.
Right. And so, but I go into the civics classroom. I'm in Mr. Hoy's civics classroom. I got this big old fro. Right.
And it's the only fro in town, I'm pretty sure.
No, not at all.
No? Okay. Gotcha.
It's funny, people don't realize there's more black people here than people think. In Fort Collins, people are always like, there's only 4 black people. I'm like, well, maybe 40.
There's probably even 400 or
exactly,
something, really. But
exactly.
But the town I lived in, Worthington, it was all Hispanics, obviously, but also then there was a lot of migrants from Laos and different things. The what's that people group that not the Laotians as much, the Hmongs. Yeah. A lot of Hmongs, but then there wasn't in Worthington. There wasn't hardly any black.
In
fellows.
Minneapolis, there's a lot of Hmong people.
Yeah. So anyway, it wasn't that rare in Farmington because it was close to Minneapolis, I imagine. So it's
in Farmington, definitely no black people.
Right, that's what I was talking about. Yeah.
So sitting there.
Well, you were saying you had this big
I'm
afro.
sitting here in class. I'm in the front row, and I'm sitting in this civics class, and I'm like, man, this is kind of weird. Awkward, nervous, and this dude taps me on my shoulder behind me. And he says, hey, man, you don't need to be so nervous. I'm black, too. And I turn around, and this dude's like blonde hair, blue eyes. And I look at him, and I'm like, what do you mean? And he's like, yeah, man, my family's all from Mississippi, man. We got black people in our family. I'm black, man. Don't worry. And
Just trying to make you
and
crack a joke.
that's been my guy since this day. Him and then I got another guy named Derek. They've been my oldest, dearest friends.
But they didn't drift into the same kind of spiral, or you
not
moved
him.
away or whatever.
Yeah, so not him. So Adam, not so much. Actually, they both had a little bit of a wild side, but nonetheless, things got messy when I got to college. Just know, like, there's nothing in terms of a story. There was, I don't think
No specific crashed a car, finally came to Jesus, whatever.
No. So until I got to college, I stayed pretty low key, and then I went wild in college. Took my first puff of a joint, and the rest was history. And then from there was other things, and Captain Morgan and everything else you can think of.
Oh, yeah.
And it's funny, I became a fan of Coors Light, and I can't stand Coors Light today. Yeah, so I came to know, I guess I don't know where you want me to go with it, but...
Yeah, I was just wondering about the circumstances. Like, a lot of times people say they had to hit rock bottom first or whatever. Did somebody just invite you to church and it changed your life?
I'll try to keep this brief because there's a lot of details. And so I came to Fort Collins in May of 2012.
Oh.
I came to Fort Collins because I had a dream about Adam and I. And I woke up from that dream to a message from Adam. That was a deeply personal message. And I didn't know God and didn't have faith, and I took that as a sign. And I was like, I'm going wherever he is. So I got here in May of 2012.
Yeah.
Between May and 2012 and November of 2012 is when really things kind of came to
set. Yeah. The foundation was set.
Well, I began to look for truth.
Yeah.
Truth became essential because I was desperate for life and peace and hope. And it all culminated with Jesus being the only one who can offer me those things. Because if you look at every other worldview or religion out there, they all put the pressure on you to be the good person, to denounce this, to stop doing this. And Jesus is the only one that says,
I agree.
You can't do it. What do you?
That was the same dent that first got in my armor when I was in Fort Collins as a young man, about the same age probably. So that landed you here. We're going to shift back to Samson so we don't have too much airtime, but I do want to come back to that story.
He's got a way crazier story than
I hate that.
I love hearing it because there's always little things I learned about what you. So
well, you can share it more next time you're on if you want to.
I'm working on a book. No, I'm just kidding.
Samson, tell me. So you went to Western New Mexico or something? Oh, then you transferred to CU.
Western New Mexico.
That's where we jumped off.
Little tiny town.
Fullback at CU. Then got a re-scholarshiped again.
Yeah, Silver City, New Mexico, tiny town. There's not a lot going on there.
Yeah.
Then, for example, my biggest class was like 50 people. My first class at CU was 350 people.
Sure.
And they're talking about you talk to the GA. I'm like, what the heck is? Was a graduate assistant? I don't know what that is.
Right.
Or do they hang out? I have no idea. So, but yeah, part of why Colorado, I had family in Colorado.
Okay.
And I kind of knew Colorado football. And then I had a girlfriend that I was dating from high school long distance, and she was here. So it was like
Gotcha.
University of Utah or Colorado. So chose Colorado to see if that would work out.
Yeah.
Got here, fell in love with it. Lived in a little tiny apartment off campus. No car, no phone. Took the bus every day. Would wake up at 4 a.m. to go run in the field so nobody could see me train. Ate top ramen. And still had to make the team, right? So I transferred with no guarantee, basically.
Sure.
Show up, 7 people at my tryout. 3 of us made the team. The other 2 guys quit by the end of spring ball. Yeah. I was the last man standing. So, needless to say, it didn't work out with my girlfriend because she was a sorority girl. She was a Pi-Phi, and mom and dad were paying for her to go to school, and so we had probably some different priorities.
Core values, man.
Yeah,
all the kids that flunked out in my college experience had parents paying for it.
Yeah,
the kids that maybe screwed up a little bit and then buckled down and decided to change, they were paying it for themselves.
Exactly right. She was incredible. Don't get me wrong. I just didn't see there being like a future, and I'm like, hey, I either got to get back on scholarship or I'm going back to junior college.
Right.
And so, hunker down. Well, on the other side of everything that scares you, are probably is everything that you've ever wanted. So 6 months later,
the obstacle is the way.
You got it. 6 months later, I go to a wedding from one of my teammates back in New Mexico. He lived in Loveland, Colorado, and he was a super senior. He had a couple red shirts and injuries, so he was graduating when I left, and he was getting married to the woman that he met in New Mexico. And at his wedding, I met his sister for the first time.
Ah.
So there's a running.
That's your wife now, I guess.
Yeah, that's a running joke. Is I always knew you had sisters. I just didn't know you had sisters. Like really good-looking sisters. And so we hit it off, and the rest is history. We were 20 years old. I mean, we've been together for 18, married for 14 this June.
Awesome.
And so
dude.
it was like one of those moments out of a
What's
movie.
your wife's name?
Her name's Casey.
And what was it about you that let Casey give you the time of day?
I was persistent. She knew exactly where I stood the moment I saw her. I was not shy about it at all. It was
right.
Yeah, I was like white on rice, man. I was like, I wanted to just know her, and we hit it off. We connect. Her brother, she always saw her brother's friends as like stupid jocks.
Yeah.
And so I was a jock, but I also was raised on a heavy dose of punk rock music and skateboarding, and we connected on a lot of music.
Homeschooled and probably had smarter parents than most of the teachers that teach a lot of people's kids and all that.
Yeah. So so we hit it off on a lot of things, art and music, and
cool.
And that was it, man. The rest is history. And so that totally changed my trajectory in life, and thought I was going to go be an orthopedic surgeon.
Oh wow.
Didn't have the grades for that.
Fair.
Playing people don't realize you play D1 football. It's like working in 80 hours a week.
I thought they had people taking your test for you and shit like that.
Well,
no.
Yeah, no.
Not at your level.
I decided not to take Native American studies. And
Right.
I decided to go get a degree in physiology.
Communications.
Yeah. So, but yeah, by the time I got to my senior year, I didn't really have any interest of trying to continue to play. So I was trying to figure out what I was going to do next.
Yeah.
And that's when I got the opportunity to go trade futures and commodities. So I graduated on a Friday with a degree in human physiology and walked into a futures and commodities brokerage on a Monday. 3 months later, as a newly crowned broker, and the Dow Jones fell 777 points to set off the economic housing crisis.
Perfect.
So I got baptized in the deep end, and then that's how Madwire was born. Madwire was kind of formed around that company. So JB and Joe Kellogg were
involved with that before.
We were all trading together.
Oh, is that right?
When 2008 hit, it's the perfect opportunity to start a business in the middle of a recession.
Interesting. Yeah.
So they broke off and were in a little tiny room where they would reverse solicit other marketing and website design companies until they figured it out, and we were still running the brokerage firm.
Interesting.
Yeah, and then the brokerage firm was feeding that business, and then the rest is history. So.
I've had some really enjoyable conversations with both JB and Joe, and was trying to schedule one on the podcast a while back, probably like a year and a half ago now, and then lost the handle. So,
JB would be a great one. I don't know about Joe. Joe probably wouldn't go.
Was bitten twice shy. He seems like a very jovial guy.
Oh, he's super jovial guy, but he like it's get up, go to work, go home, hang out with his family.
Yeah, why the hell would I want to spend 2 hours?
It's like that's for the young guys. Yeah,
Fair enough. Well, JB, if you're listening, let's get you booked up in June.
Yeah. I'll make it happen. I'll make the intro.
Fair enough. So you were there right from the very foundation of Madwire. Were you an owner of that? Or
I'm a minority.
You were right from the start, almost. Yeah.
Yeah, I had to come in.
You still are. Even.
Yeah, I had to come in and earn it, obviously.
Right.
So
because you didn't have any money.
A little bit different path, but But yeah, it was an incredible journey, and
cool.
Yeah. So
we talk a lot about what you've learned in that space and stuff. And so we're getting close to the same time you joined Madwire. You're not, or how long behind that were you?
What year was that?
I didn't join until 2017.
Oh, 17. So what were you doing from like fall of 12 to 17? What were you up to?
Technically, my first day was January 1st, 2018.
Let's go.
But I got the job before that, and. So your question was, what was I doing?
Yeah, what was you up to? You moved to Fort Collins, got saved in the fall of 12.
Yeah, I got saved, and I was trying to figure out what just happened. And
who am I?
Yeah, so it's interesting because I think my life is a testimony to God's grace. Like, to me, I feel like I have no qualifications to be in this room, to be frank. Like, I really do. Like, that's the way I think about it. Like, I have no qualification. We'd be at Madwire, and people would be like, so what school did you go to? And I'd be like, dude,
High
I
school.
didn't.
Flunked out of JC
I
from community college.
I barely got out of high school.
He went
like,
to the school of hard knocks.
I barely got out of high school. I really did, brother.
Yeah,
Like
that's fair. I mean, a lot of the most
and,
successful people I know have a high school diploma. So,
Well,
and so for me, like I spent. So I worked at. I was in hospitality. I worked as a bartender or a restaurant manager.
okay.
That's all I was doing, and then
Your favorite among the bars and restaurants that you
In
worked
town?
at? Yeah.
and in
The
town.
ones where you worked at.
Oh, easily Cafe Vino.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it was unique, and it was my first introduction to. Oh, these are professional people. You know,
Right.
there's an attitude that tends to be in that restaurant space. Of like,
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
transitioning. It's like,
Right,
maybe you should actually think about this like a professional, and you
Yeah.
would see some other things. And so anyways, what happens is, I did used to box, and one of my good friends, his name is Seth. He says to me, "Dude, you got to come to this place." And work out with me. And I'm like, sure. He's like, it's boxing. I'm super critical of anything that's like boxing related workout just because.
Is this Joe's place? Buckner?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I go and I hit the bag and I meet Joe and we work out for the first time. And then Joe's like, hey, man, he wants to talk to me because he can see that like I know
You
what
could
I'm
box.
doing.
You actually know how to punch the bag.
And so then what happened is I ended up becoming just joining his team and helping him support the best way I could in building by classes and everything. And then that led me to one Saturday, I'm helping him run a boot camp in Loveland for this gym called Pursuit.
Okay.
And they're people that they put up serving. And so we ended up doing this boot camp. We're doing boxing and fitness but afterwards I'm sitting there talking to this guy. And at the time I'm working with Joe, but I'm also at a company called Lamar Advertising. Lamar Advertising, and I'm working in the operations and slowly trying to get into the sales and stuff.
Right. You're paying your dues, ultimately.
You know,
And you had a talent spotter in the house.
You just do it. You're just trying to,
That's my superpower.
Yeah, you're aspiring to other things, but you don't necessarily know how to get there.
Yeah.
But I did know. I'm pretty convinced of one thing. Like, if you aspire to lead a certain quality of life, you should treat people in a way that mimics that.
Yeah.
Like, you should do that. That would be, if you don't got anything else going for you, you should treat people in that way.
Yeah.
And so, longer story short, boom, I get connected into Madwire, and that starts really the journey of transitioning into the corporate world.
Yeah. And just even learning about marketing and
actually
sales
getting
development
hands on.
and all that kind
The
of
funny
stuff.
thing is, though, like, to go back to my story, I personally think I have a knack for advertising and messaging, but here's why I think I have it. Because I think the black community in America is arguably the most marketed to community in America. And I say that because if you look at the way the dollar circulates in the black community amongst other communities, it circulates the least. So that means the dollars
like
made
the
in
multiplier is going slower.
So that means the dollars that are made by the people in that community leave the community fastest. But what do they go to? Consumer goods.
Right.
How do they know about them? Marketing.
Right.
And so I inevitably had a knack for, I think, what was like good messaging, good ideas, good lines of communication.
Yeah.
I mean, we tend to be, if you look at the black American, tends to be pretty creative and it's very expressive.
Are you stereotyping right now?
Oh, totally.
Just kidding.
He can get away with it, though.
Totally.
I'll add to the stereotype, but you are legit poetic. You are good with words. You are a musician, too, so...
Yeah, how did you get so smart and well-spoken? Like, did you do some learning outside of your college or high school experiences and things? Or?
I taught myself, but here's how I taught myself. I would watch soap operas. I would watch Seinfeld and Frasier.
Yeah.
And I would read books.
Yeah.
And so I learned, I guess, what you could maybe call something that mimics proper form of communication or a baseline form. By way of watching those who communicated differently than me.
My exchange student that we have right now, hey Manuela, if you listen, but she's from Brazil and she's the only one of her friends that speaks fluent English, and she got it from Gossip Girl and different things. So like, and then to learn written English, she would watch German Netflix with subtitles.
Genius.
Yeah, and
Nobody told her to do this. She just
She's smart.
decided that she wanted to learn English, and that seemed like a good hack.
Yeah, Gossip Girl, absolutely. They're so dramatic in how they communicate, right? And inflections. And
Well,
stuff
I think
and
sometimes she brings a little extra drama to the conversation, but she is a 17-year-old girl, so that might just be
100%.
natural. That's really interesting. Yeah,
Yeah.
So if I was just about going to say that, but if we dropped you in Buffalo in the neighborhood where you grew up and let you sit there for 3 weeks, would you come back talking differently?
I don't
than
think
you do
so.
now? No.
I don't think so. I would, in talking to the people there would be certain things that would probably naturally happen by way of
in talking to them or whatever.
Yeah,
but
for sure. But
you're really well spoken. Like honestly,
But I
that's
don't
something
change-
I've
I'm
learned
not gonna
about you
change.
from the start. And when did we meet? Because we met at, I think either at my church or when our church tried to spin a church off with
I'm not
Jeremy
sure.
or something. I feel like I'm not sure either. Must not have been that special.
No, maybe not. Probably not.
Kurt was like, hey, you're one of the like 40 black guys in Fort Collins.
I was actually 400.
Just kidding.
Well, I'd only have really 2 other what I could call friends, and so if I can get 3 out of 40, shoot, I got like a 7% ratio.
Nice batting average.
Dude, I will say one thing, and I did have a couple people that actually cared enough to try to challenge me intellectually. My aunt Shirley.
Okay.
She was a principal for a school. At one point, she challenged me. I had my other aunt. Her name is Vanessa. She didn't really challenge me, but she would just be like, "How's school going?" And I didn't have any answer for it.
At least she cared.
Those are 2 people I can think of that I guess in some aspect were a very positive force in terms of intelligence to think about it. And then my mom, one memory that I actually have about my mother, my mom, so I don't know, I can't say I know my mom.
Yeah.
But I can say, dude, my mom did not take mess from people, dude. Like, she didn't take mess. And so she placed an emphasis, even though the interactions were few with her and I, when we had interactions, she placed an emphasis on how I communicated with her in those interactions. So I got in big trouble one time because I called her man. You know how you'd be like, man, get out. You should have seen what happened. 'Cause she said, I'm not a man.
Yeah.
And words matter.
And truth is real. Yeah. Interesting.
100%.
Did you raise yourself a lot? Kind of. I mean, you skirted
I think I
past
survived.
dysfunctional.
I think I survived myself. I don't think I raised myself. I honestly, I think the raising part of Darius began when I became a Christian, and I don't mean to just be this super religious guy, but I'm serious. Like, I felt
you spent most of your prior time not really growing up all the way.
I spent most of my life feeling invisible,
right,
and not really knowing, and so there was no output, But
can I edify you real quick, bro? But that's one of the things that makes you a great husband and dad. Yeah, the way that you love your kids and your family is the byproduct of what you went through. You know what I mean?
Fact.
So
yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
I would agree with that.
It's tremendous to watch you as a husband and a father.
And tell me about that, because we're chronologing here, and you've had a wife for some years, and you've got
8 years.
8 years, and you got a couple of
We have
smalls
4 children.
too. 4.
Four children. Three and 1 on the way, but I counted as 4.
Should we shift out of, because I think we get into Madwire, we learned some things,
Yeah.
then we jumped into where here.
Yeah.
Let's talk about that love story just a little bit. Where did you meet your...
You got to tell the story. Dude.
Which one?
Just about her dad.
Oh,
was
yeah.
just like, get away from my daughter.
Yeah. So what happens is I become a Christian, and I end up attending this men's breakfast one time.
Okay.
And there I meet a guy who will become my brother-in-law. But what happens is he invites me and Adam over. Adam can't make it. I go. I meet my wife. Her name is Celia. And long story short, I become friends of Celia and her family. And I get the bright idea one day, and I'm like, hey, we've had enough interactions where I know there's something here. And I say, hey, can I talk to your dad? Because her dad was traveling quite a bit. He's going around teaching the Bible. And I said, hey, can I talk to your dad about pursuing you? by the way, I knew I was different in Christ because of Christ. I never spoke like that. Can I pursue you?
Old Darius like, yo, girl, you want
pursued?
Yeah.
But anyways, so she's like, yeah. So I go and I'm like, hey, I would love to know if I could talk to your daughter. And this is at their house, and it just went bad. And he was just like, get out. Basically, not rude, but he was like, it's time for you to go.
Interesting.
But here's the beauty of it. What he wanted to do in that moment, immediately, the second I expressed interest in his daughter, was he wanted to ensure that I had not been manipulative towards his daughter. And I love it. And he's like one of my, I call him dad.
Yeah.
He is my dad. And it's strange, man. It's an interesting story because like he kicked me out and I couldn't talk to my wife. And I remember it was such an emotional time. I'm like sitting in my room with candles lit, crying and stuff. Like I can't see her and I miss her. And but all he wanted to do was make sure that
he just wanted to check in with her.
He wanted to make sure I had not hurt his daughter in any capacity. And he took that out. I mean, it's better than beating around the bush. Like,
oh yeah,
get out.
Yeah.
All right, you gotta go. I heard you. Gotta go.
Right.
And so what happens is that we ended up meeting. But here's the thing that I asked him, which I love this man so much. We ended up meeting. So we kind of dated, basically. We basically dated. We went on a few dates, him and I.
Oh.
Yeah. And I'm dead serious. We would sit in the alley cat.
Yeah, that's cool.
We would sit in the alley cat and hang out on a little coffee date.
Well, and Pricey probably maybe even had gotten to know a little bit about your history and background and stuff like that, whatever.
Well, I came to him and I said, hey, I know you're her father. But could you be the role of a brother to me? I don't want to mess this up. I don't want to do that. My life was riddled with that behind me. Right?
Yeah.
And so it got a little awkward. We had to work through our dating, and then we ended up, then he ended up giving me permission, and I walked with my wife for about 1.5 years before we got married.
Yeah.
And we would have got married sooner, but our sister had some health issues, and the family had to go through that, and I had to go through that with them.
Yeah.
And so
more than time.
Yeah. So that's how I met her.
Awesome.
And we got married in 2015.
And you said you've been with your wife for 18 years, married 14, and how many smalls you got around there?
We got 2.
Samson? You got 2?
9 and 11.
9 and 11.
2 little girls, Delilah Love and Kendi Summer.
So we, I don't know if I didn't prepare you guys probably, but we always do a one-word description of your children on this show. Who would like to go first? And give them a name and a description. You can talk a little bit more and elaborate.
One word description.
One word. Hyphens are okay if you need it.
Hyphens are okay.
Yeah.
Man, okay.
That's interesting.
I'll go with Delilah Love.
Okay.
She's actually named after her dad and her mom, right? Samson and Delilah. And her mother is a Valentine baby born in Loveland, Colorado. So that's where Delilah Love comes from.
Fun.
Delilah Love is she is an artistic empath.
Interesting.
She's a little more emotional.
Yeah.
She wears it on her sleeve.
Yeah. Yeah.
And she just loves art, and she's an incredible swimmer.
My staff person, Alicia, who you paid a nice compliment to on the newsletter just today, we were sitting in the Better Business Bureau luncheon, and there was some of the new business awards, and a couple of them were visibly nervous and stuff like that. And Alicia was like, I'm so like seeing them so uncomfortable kind of makes me uncomfortable. And I think I benefited Alicia in saying, yes, and like this is a moment that's a step along the way to them being less uncomfortable.
Yep.
Next time.
Yep.
And so just value that.
It's perfect. I mean, so my daughter is the one that, she'll get nervous enough that she'll just not want to do something because she needs to know what it's like, right?
Yeah.
So example was she was getting ready for her first swim meet, and she's a natural swimmer. She's built like a swimmer, long legs, long arms, long torso. Put her in the water, she looks like she's been professionally trained. She just got it, right? And so it's her very first swim meet. It's the day before, and she's been like, Daddy, I don't want to go. I just want to stop swimming. And I go, okay. I said, if you stop swimming, then if you ever want to do it again, you're going to pay for it. Daddy's not going to pay for it anymore. You're going to have to figure it out. And she goes, and she finally does it, and she wins like a bunch of first places. And then she was like sold on it. Right? So we're always talking to her that, hey, nervousness and excitement feel exactly the same way. They only differ by one thing, the thoughts that you're telling yourself. If you're nervous, you're thinking about everything that could go wrong, and if you're excited, you're thinking about everything that could go right.
Yeah.
And so that's how I work with my little emotional creature.
Cool.
My younger one, Kennedy Summer,
Yep.
who I just love the name. The way we spell the name Delilah is with a Y. We don't spell it like the traditional biblical
Sure.
sense.
Well, that's good.
Casey, and then we got
Because
mine.
Delilah's not necessarily like a superhero with the Bible.
Yeah, that's true.
The other spelling. This one will be.
We
a
love the name
superhero or
Delilah,
something.
right? So then we went Delilah.
That's actually my wife's grandmother's name.
Yeah.
It's Lila.
So we love that name. So Kennedy, I wanted all my girls to have Y's in their name.
Yeah.
And then Summer, she's the summer baby. My wife and I met in the summer. So Summer of Love, right? So that's where the middle names come from.
And
So
Kennedy's one word.
she's charismatic.
Ooh.
She's
We'll do her well.
She's a lot like her dad. She can make friends with anybody.
Yeah. Never met a stranger.
Wow.
Nope.
Fair enough.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Dude, his daughters are wonderful to be around.
That's cool.
Yeah. So we have Lily
Okay.
Marie.
Okay.
I think the word that I would use to describe her, I would say brilliant.
Ooh.
Sawyer, my second daughter, her middle name is Rose, and
We
I
set a
would
trend
say,
here.
and I would say to describe her, I would say I want to use either rambunctious or sensitive, because she's like this combination of brave, but she's extremely sensitive. So she will get wild, but she is sensitive. And
Yeah.
I don't know if rambunctious is the word that meshes those
I think
two.
we can use that hyphen here. Rambunctious, sensitive.
Okay. and then Theodore Innocent.
Oh, that's pretty.
He shares my middle name. And, I think my son is an imitator right now. The word I would say is imitator because
Well, then do good stuff.
Well, that's actually been the most revelatory thing about being a father to a son.
Yeah.
Is more than my other two children who actually had more access. He mimics everything that I do.
Yeah.
And he picks up on things that I didn't even realize that he picked
Yeah.
up on. One time he came in my office and he did something with the microphone that I had in a way that mimicked what I was doing, and I never thought he saw me doing that with the microphone.
Right.
And I was like, whoa.
No, he's watching everything.
He's watching everything. And he wants to be in there with me.
How old is he?
He's just turned 2.
Okay.
And he wants to be in the room with me when I'm working.
Yeah.
He wants to do everything that I'm doing. Like
That's pretty honoring and awkward and threatening in little ways too, right?
Yeah, it's deep, man. It's deep.
pressure.
But it's a privilege though, like to
Yeah,
have children. Like, and so those are my children.
I thought you said you had 4.
Yeah, we got one coming.
Oh, one on the way. Wow.
So the word would be unknown.
Yeah. And expected when?
Excited.
In the fall, early fall.
Awesome.
And so,
Congratulations.
appreciate it.
Yeah. When I say family, like outside of, your immediate homes and things, like I heard you calling your father-in-law dad.
Yeah.
And stuff. So let's stay with you for a moment, Darius. What's kind of the bigger word family mean to you in today's space? Are you still close with your brother? Is he still around? Your sisters?
My sisters, two of the 3 of my sisters, I have a solid relationship with. But I would say, it's hard to say what family means. I think family is, I just see it defined in actions. To be honest, like I have, there are 2 men that I call my brothers that I don't share DNA with them.
Right.
But they would lay down their lives for me.
Yeah.
And I would lay down my lives for them.
Yeah.
My life, I don't have more than one life, my life
Yeah.
for them. So I don't know. I don't know the right wording, but it's equated to those who, how they treat you.
Well, and what I think I'm hearing, Jesus talked about that too, right? Like these are my brothers, and whatever. And so I think that choice of who you want to really be around is a great blessing too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, love is a verb. It's a verb. It's
Action
not this,
verb even,
It's
yeah.
not this weird noun that's like floating around, ready to sweep you up.
Yep.
I like that. Samson, anything to add on that topic, General?
I mean, to me, family is just priority. I love my family so much.
Yeah, dude,
And
this
so,
man prioritizes his family.
So, as busy as I am, I love my family. My wife especially is just, we could lose everything tomorrow and she would, sleep under a bridge in a car with me.
Yeah.
Like it's cool, and she's we've just grown up so much together.
Yeah.
Dude, it's great.
That's,
let me tell you something about Samson. I have a privilege of being around entrepreneurs, and he's one of the rare ones who, I see you do excellent in business and things like that, but it's only matched by your desire to be excellent with your family. And there aren't a lot of I'm telling you, there's less men than you think that people that might say
that really prioritize
that, but it's different when I'm like, dude, what are you doing? Oh, I'm just here with, I'm doing this with my family.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, dude, I don't do this after a certain time. He lives it,
My hobby is work and my business and then my family. That's about it.
Yeah.
Did that come from seeing it modeled maybe in your dad, and then seeing it even modeled in Joe? Or where did you get that from? I'm not letting this go.
I don't know, man. That's a good question. I just knew my whole life I wanted to be married and have a family. That was never a question. I can't say that my family dynamic was like super amazing,
right?
There's some rough spots.
Nobody's perfect.
But one of the things we didn't talk about is I was an only child for 12 years, and then my little brother was born. Same parents, long stop between trains.
Yeah.
And then I have a little sister who's 14 years younger than me. And so,
you're the way older brother.
Yeah, I was like the cool uncle.
Right, totally.
And so when I left to go, I was 18. I left the house. My brother and sister were 6 and 8 respectively.
Yeah.
And so, it was interesting. So we just started becoming friends when they were in their 20s,
right.
basically.
By the time they finally get,
So,
I'm 10 years older than my youngest brother, and that same thing. Like, I left for college when he was still just a little punk ass. So we've only really gotten to know each other, the last 10, 15 years or whatever.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, man, I just always wanted to have a family.
He's still a little punk ass in case he's listening. Joe, hi.
Yeah. I got one of those too. Jake, in case you're listening.
We touched on faith a fair bit, especially in your story, Darius. You mentioned your background a little bit, Samson, but do you want to expound on what faith is in your space?
I was raised Catholic,
and
I guess I always knew of the story of who Jesus was. I knew God and definitely believe in a creator and a higher power, and then when I hit my 20s, I was no saint in college either, and definitely struggled I really wrestled actually with religion. And I thought I was
religion instead of faith.
I thought I was wrestling with faith because I didn't understand the difference between the two.
Yeah.
And so I spent a lot of my 20s really just questioning a lot of things. And so, I ended up kind of coming full circle with, hey, I believe that there's a creator. There's no way I can look up at the universe and look in the entire world
right.
and logically say that like a bunch of people who all kind of look similar just randomly all evolved out of nowhere and just popped up on different continents. I can't come to grips with that.
Yeah.
And I'm somebody who's, deeply trained in science, right? Like I have a degree in physiology. I have a master's in sports nutrition.
Sure.
I spent a lot of time thinking through those things. And I think the two things can exist simultaneously. I think that more that science goes along, it actually proves the case for fine-tuning. And
some of the best Christian thinkers I know are like scientists. And
one book that I'm reading right now by Eric Metaxas is called Is Atheism Dead? It's an incredible book if you haven't read it.
Interesting. No, I need to read it. I'll write it down.
It's all about just talking through the science that actually makes a stronger case for a creator than it does deny it.
Agreed.
So I was able to come to terms with that, and then kind of like floated in and out of church and never really. And then when I turned 30 years old, I had a quarter-life crisis.
Okay.
Woke up and legitimately had a panic attack. First time I experienced that. Heart attack, that I was going to die. Had anxiety for the first time, depression for the first time in my life. And so you get to that place pretty quick. You start looking at the rest of your life and thinking, man, there's a lot of things that I wanted to do that I haven't done, and a lot of things that I probably need to get right in my life, and including, fix the relationship with my parents and, make sure that I'm walking the path a little bit tighter than I probably was. And so, so that moment was a big shift for me. And then I found myself in church because I didn't know where else to turn.
Back at Catholic Church?
No, I actually in Foundations, which is a
Yeah,
non-denominational.
that's your home church. Yeah, so I've been to lots of events there and stuff.
Yeah, and then from there, just started my journey. And honestly, the biggest shift was actually reading the Bible, and walking through it. And even what took me to the next level was actually, I'm in a men's group, and we meet every single Tuesday, same time, same place. All men with families, all men who've struggle with the same things that everybody else does.
That all men struggle with.
All entrepreneurs, right?
Especially, yeah.
And that's what we do. We just walk through the Word
cool.
together and actually study it and question it and challenge it and think about it and dwell on it. And that has been the number one thing that has helped me.
That was
grow.
a huge. Sorry to
No, you're
interrupt,
good.
but in my own personal, because I was 25-ish before, I went to church to humor my wife, kind of.
Yeah.
My now wife. But I was being worked on for quite a while, and part of it was that difference in grace that you mentioned earlier, Darius, and that notion. I like to tease that I'm a Christian because I need more grace than most people. Some people can really live that righteous life, but that ain't me, I guess.
Well, I think it's a fine balance, right? There's something to be said for truth, right?
Totally, yeah.
But there's something to be said for grace, and you need both.
Totally.
I think one of the things I wrestled with just being raised Catholic is I just never felt like I was qualified.
Yeah.
And I couldn't get in. So I didn't understand this concept of a relationship with your Creator, and as Darius said, not having to bear all the weight, right?
That was the focus of our Easter message at the Crossing this spring was kind of the recognizing Jesus as both Savior and Sovereign. Mm-hmm. And because sometimes I think some churches or people or me love the Savior, don't give the Sovereign his due.
Take my sins.
Spend a little time in Revelations, you'd be like, oh wait, yeah, there's some stuff here.
Well, back to the family thing. I think that why do I prioritize my family? Because I realize that my family and my wife do not belong to me.
Mm-hmm.
They belong to the Lord, and I'm responsible for all the gifts that I've been given. That goes down to the ideas that I'm given, the entrepreneurial endeavors, the employees that I have, the money that I have, the family that I have,
Sure.
this relationship that I have with you, the relationship I have with him, and so when you change that perspective, and especially walking in a world that says your truth, Kurt,
right,
it's all about your truth, which is very selfish. It changes the dynamic. So how I steward my money and where I put my money where my mouth is, understanding that $100K check that I just got, it's not mine. So I need to give back to the Lord what's the Lord's, right? And I need to orient my heart properly. And the world does not tell you to think that way.
I want to ask you something because I wonder if it's similar. So in my own world, I went to a church. I memorized the books of the Bible, but I never heard the good news, really, which sounds not too dissimilar from you.
Correct.
And one of the things I carried around through my late teens and early 20s was guilt.
Yeah.
Because I was, a strikingly handsome and smart and charismatic person that was given more blessings than I deserved, but yet I recognized that I had the same ugly stains on my soul that most everybody else did in similar measure. Yeah. And so, there's to whom much is given, much is expected kind of thing. Do you vibe with that notion a little bit or not necessarily?
I didn't really feel that, but I was more trapped in the rules and the regulation.
Yeah, very legalistic.
Very legalistic. And I didn't know how to wrestle with that. So to me, a lot of times throughout my life, the Bible was used as a tool to weaponize. Mm-hmm. It was a weapon towards me.
Yeah, the religion is the...
Yeah, and it gets used that way a lot. And it turns a lot of people off. And I think that's part of the battle that Christianity is up against is it's, you have a sect that is not representative of the entire community. And yeah, so
lots of them.
So I battled with that, but I also came to terms with the fact that, the people in my life that maybe represented it that way, they're wrestling with their own stuff.
Yeah.
And so I had to actually turn around and give a lot of grace back to the people that I held so much bitterness to.
Yeah.
And forgiveness, which is at the core of everything that Christianity talks about, right? And forgiving yourself, forgiving everyone else, and we can disagree on something, and we can simultaneously still be friends. Yeah.
Well, that leads us straight into the politics segment with with a plum. Like,
Let's go.
There is, I think there's kind of two camps in that space right now that, like, we can disagree and both be kind of right, from our perspective. I was teasing my friend in San Francisco, like, it's okay for San Francisco to have weak ass, terrible paper straws, because they don't want them plastic straws floating around in the bays and messing up their turtles and all these sea lions and stuff. But in North Dakota, they just want cheaper straws that actually work for an hour with my soda.
Yeah.
And the chances of those straws coming into San Francisco Bay is not very high. So we can actually both be right with different sensibilities on that specific one little issue.
Yeah.
Anyway.
I
planted that seed. But, talk to me about politics in general. Or big picture, small picture.
Yeah. Well,
what are you curious? Anything particularly you're curious to know?
What rubs you the wrong way? What, we've got a lot of interesting stuff here. There's apparently not going to be any Democratic debates, despite a couple of candidates announced. But
it'll
that's
happen.
kind of normal. You think they will?
Yeah.
No way.
I bet
no
you.
way Biden will debate with
bet
Robert F. Kennedy Jr.
I don't. There will be debates.
So, without getting too, so this is, I think, part of
$50.
I think this is part of the issue, though, is like the problem isn't necessarily, we're talking about surface level stuff. The problem is, I think personally, in the core fundamentals of, we live in a country where people don't actually understand the root
Right.
of the Constitution and the root of what this country was founded on.
Federalist type.
And they live in this lie, right, of that. Here, I'll give you an example. You know what will fix a lot of the problems we have right now? A good depression, right?
Yeah.
Because all the things that we're currently fighting over right now are legitimately ridiculous in the grand scheme of things when you compare it to the broader world.
Yeah.
And so, it's like we've lost sight of what made the country what it is today, that gives everybody this opportunity to speak about the things that they want to speak about. And so the byproduct of that is they're jaded.
Yeah.
And so now, to your point, yes, we can have these two differing beliefs, but what's happened now is if you don't agree with me, Kurt, screw you.
Right.
I'm against you now. You're my enemy.
Yeah.
And that's not how this
Right.
republic is actually set up. And
Right.
Darius has a lot of thoughts on this. So you opened up a can of worms. So Darius, I'll let you take
Hit
over.
me, Darius.
Yeah, it's interesting because like you said, like what annoys me or what bothers you. I think I've reached a place where anti-American sentiment bothers me.
Yes, agreed, 100%.
But here's why. Not because I'm a quote-unquote MAGA Republican, as the left would like to call me in saying that, or because I'm a white supremacist in black
I hate
skin,
when they use that term,
or anything
MAGA.
like that.
It's like such a brand.
The reason why anti-American sentiment bothers me is because history is littered with people and nations and conflict. And the nature of nations and people is to advance and move and make choices and do different things. And if you think you have anti-American sentiment now, wait until if there was a reality where the United States wasn't the military superpower and you actually dealt with anti-American sentiment.
Right.
You'd be a patriot real quick if someone from foreign lands came here trying to take your life away. You'd be a patriot real quick.
There's a good movie or TV series about that, Man in the High Castle.
It's
all about post World War II where Nazis won.
Yeah.
Oh, I've heard of that. I never have seen it though.
It's a different world. It's a different perspective.
Yeah. And so for me, but the reason why I have that position is because, so my life changed as it relates to the nation about going on 3.5 years ago.
Okay.
And what happened is it started with Os Guinness, if you're familiar with Os Guinness. I was reading a book. It's called The Free People's Suicide by Os Guinness, who is a social critic / philosopher / great communicator and writer.
Interesting. I'll read him.
But he's a believer, and he broke down, and this is me as a Christian. He broke down the golden triangle of freedom. So faith, freedom, and virtue, basically.
Yeah.
Right? Like you can't have freedom unless you have virtue, because you need to make choices that are not destructive to the people around you,
Sure.
in your nation. But what's the standard for that? Faith, right? And it goes in a triangle. But he's from England. He's from Europe, right? And And then that took me to another guy, Eric Metaxas. And longer story short is ultimately I found myself being around people who were actually challenging me to read the Declaration, to read the Constitution, to get the context and understand the language and the players.
Yeah.
And it became very apparent to me, whoa, what you have in America is very unique. It's very unique. And that uniqueness creates a great response. It's designed to have a great responsibility on the citizens of the nation.
Totally.
And
to hold their government accountable to it.
But to hold their nation.
Yeah.
Our nation will topple at the abdication of its citizens bearing that responsibility.
True.
It won't be because of corrupt leaders. It will be because of citizens that abdicate their responsibility out of ignorance or out of rebellion or out of...
Well, and responsibility is hard.
Right.
You know, like we haven't declared a war for 70 years in this country or something, and the Congress keeps making itself more and more pathetic every decade, it seems, both houses. And so they're abdicating their responsibilities even in checking the executive powers.
Yeah, it's like, so, for example, the Constitution and the Bill of Rights, these people think that that's about us. It's about the government. It's not about you. It's not about that you have freedom of speech. It's that the government can't infringe on your ability to speak. It's not about you. It's about them. And that's what the whole point was. It wasn't about, and it's not just like, a free-for-all with the citizenry. There's tension. It creates a tension. But the whole point of what we have, if there's a reason why the grievances come in the Declaration. The whole point is about government. Like, those in government get their just powers from the consent of the governed. The whole framework is about what they can't do. Those who assume that position, whom you consented to be in that position, what they can't do.
Well, that's kind of the difference of today's political climate when we talk about like the deep state.
Yeah.
We didn't vote for any of those people, that federal bureaucracy. And I saw the Pentagon released a statement saying that the world is going to be a better place now that Tucker Carlson isn't on the network anymore. Like the Pentagon?
Yeah.
Like the Pentagon releases a statement like that.
But the reason why these things can happen is because, again, like if you don't understand that there's great responsibility that you've been given through this charter, through this republic, if you don't understand that a republic is undergirded by the ultimately, authority of the law, in this case, the Constitution.
Well, and our citizens are looking for the benefits, not the responsibility.
Yeah, if you don't understand that. But if you don't
even
understand
people that come here.
You become ignorant and you become lazy and you just enjoy the fruit of the blessings of liberty without the responsibility to maintain it.
And to echo that's the problem.
Right.
Is everybody's about hyper-individualism. And it's not about making a decision that's actually there for the greater good. Right? And so
that's where that selfishness kind of comes too far.
100%. There's one thing to have freedom and autonomy, right? But like you said, much is given, much is expected. And it requires there to be some sort of regulation over that. Otherwise, we have disorder. Yeah. And there's another great book. If you're listening to this podcast and you actually care about geopolitics, you should read the book called Accidental Superpower by Peter Zion. And it gives
watching some of his videos
it gives you a great understanding of why America is the greatest country in the world. So the reason that communism is so strongly rooted in China is because in order for them to maintain order between East and West China, they have to rule with an iron fist because they need each other's resources, but they don't speak the same language. You can't just drive from Eastern China to Western China, right? So one of the things that makes America so great is we have the most navigable waterways in the world. We have more shorelines, defendable shorelines. We have more commodities and resources, more farmland than any other country in the world. We have the greatest highway system. We have the greatest railway system. Right, and we have more oil and gas in Saudi Arabia, right? And we can fly from San Diego to New York and speak the same language. Yeah. Right?
Yeah, there's something to that.
So there is some continuity there, right? Now, there's an interesting dichotomy that looks at the political and geographical landscape of why on the other side of the Rocky Mountains are things so different? Because when you get to California, you get in the Pacific Northwest, it's a little bit of a different world,
well,
right?
yes, but But if you get to Spokane, you're still on the other side of the Rocky Mountains, but you're more like in North Dakota now than you are like in Seattle.
Sure, and if you go to Israel and then you go out and around that, right? That's you're referencing
Fair.
one little dichotomy in the middle of the grander landscape.
Well,
right?
yes, but I know where all the people in California are over there on the coast and stuff. But like, it's more of a rural urban divide from what I've seen.
Yeah, it's definitely. I mean, that's definitely grown quite a bit. You know,
Yeah.
as the closer you get to city centers, the more liberal it becomes. You know what I mean?
I want to bring you back on because you're kind of a student of history and you have firsthand experience of what like inner city life was like and stuff. Like, it's one of my, I don't know if it's a passion, but I'm really curious, like, how can we keep the inner cities of our country from getting any worse? And if anything, how can we make them like strong and vibrant? You know, we've got our downtown Fort Collins was a dump not that long, 30 years ago. What can we really actually do to make a difference on a state or a national policies? You got any ideas that
In the inner
or
city?
what should we not do? Yeah, how do we spark some hope in the inner cities?
I think
Is that out above your pay grade?
I think one thing I've seen personally firsthand is I think inner city youth would benefit from being exposed to the cultures and people groups that embody the values that they need for their own people group to flourish, even if it be not their people groups.
Yeah.
So, for example, just an illustration: if you could get young black people around, let's just say Jewish families, that and how the Jewish community interacts with each other around business and faith and like, for example,
nuclear family.
Yeah,
like,
or Asian families are very high performers in our country now.
The black dollar would change in circulation. And remember, I was talking about the circulation.
Yeah.
It would change in circulation if potentially it would change if those who make those dollars who are black were exposed to the way that the dollar circulates in other cultures.
Sure.
It's just a matter of knowing that that's an option, and so, there are factors in play that go beyond just someone prescribing a solution,
Right.
for sure.
Well, education is a big hamper.
I mean, what I think would actually help the most, I think would be, there's so many different things, because I think in the inner city, I think arts and entertainment, athletics, these very sort of epicenter institutions that get a lot of attention, drive a lot of the stimulus and the behavior of what's acceptable. If you look at media creates a lot of the standard that's acceptable for behavior within these communities. And so I think I would change the inputs that are coming from media.
I'm thinking about some of the cop killer songs and the old black rap and stuff like that from way back when. Is that the seeds of the disrespect?
Maybe.
No, because they've earned that disrespect.
It's funny because in your question, I'm trying to tap dance around some of the most core answers, but I think you lack families, you lack the presence of men. The country as a whole, but you look at inner city, in particular, black community, you see the lack of black fathers, black husbands, black lineage of men and women who are raising children. You see lack of economic options, lack of entrepreneurship, investment. For example, we were talking. So what we're doing clearly, and we know we can see the wealth transfer that's on the horizon. That's actually really in full swing. But if I was in the black community or any community where I had poverty in this nation, and I just got my tax return for $4,000, $6,000, $8,000, I'm going to get together with 3 of my cousins and we're going to buy a business.
Right.
And then we're going to do the same thing next year.
Yeah.
And we're going to do the same thing next year until 2030. And we're going to look up and we're going to have 8 businesses. And now the financial trajectory of my family has just been changed.
What most people don't know, I grew up in a part of Pasadena called Altadena, and it was run by a group called the ABC, which is the Altadena Block Crips.
Oh.
We were 2 blocks north of Woodbury, which separated the Tip Tops, which is where the Bloods lived. And the very first weekend that we moved in, 2 Bloods got shot and killed right down my street. I had bullet holes in my windows. So I knew what it was like to grow up in the inner city as a white kid in a predominantly black and Hispanic community. And so I know what that dynamic feels like. But I can just speak from my own experience. I have an extended part of my family that generationally believes that you get what you get and you don't throw a fit. And that life is hard and that life happens to you. And the byproduct of that is the core of that family. They all kind of grew up in a way thinking that you get what you get and you don't throw a fit. And statistically speaking or economically speaking, that most people won't make $50,000 plus or minus of what the highest income earner in their house made. Right. So if the average person in my family made, let's call it $65,000, there's not a lot of people around them that they can see examples of who are just killing it. Right?
Yeah.
So that got passed down to generation instead of next generation.
Sure.
But I had a set of parents who never, ever, 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 ever said that I couldn't have or go or do or be anything that I wanted to be.
Yeah.
Grew up in the same circumstances, grew up in that same neighborhood, right? Experienced all that same stuff. We have 2 nickels to rub together.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And so
Mindset's a lot of it.
So a lot of it is just generationally what is being passed down to you, right? And it does come from your environment, your circumstance, and what you're surrounded by, for sure. I think it's a misconception to say that it's a lack of education, because I think our education system is a farce in the sense that that's going to give you the actual skills that you need in order to operate economically, right? Just because you understand grammar and reading, right? Like that doesn't necessarily mean that all of a sudden you're going to be successful. So is that what it is? No, it's not that. It's actually a lack of understanding our monetary policy, and we can get into the semantics of that. But and when you live in a fiat money in world or environment where cheap money is readily and available to everybody, it creates a different dynamic that is not actually very natural. Yeah, it doesn't have a natural ebb and a flow, and so those communities are being told that it's okay to get on food stamps and have all these things, which very beneficial, necessary at times, but it's a supplement or a tool. It's a short-term solution to a long-term problem, right? That's not what they're being educated on. Yeah, totally. That's not what they're being taught about, right? How to game the system, how to leverage the system to their advantage. Will define what your advantage is. Not having to work.
Yeah. I would also say to that, like, to anybody, whether you're, I guess actually just keeping it straight, I'll speak to inner city people who happen to have brown skin. I would say the fact that our descendants were slaves, the fact that slavery existed in this nation, is not the limiter in your life. The fact that racism is a real thing is not a limitation on your life. It's going to be the choices you make, the relationships you have, the way you think, the way you handle your resources. That will be that. Like, and I'd be remiss to say that I didn't think that at one point. I'd be remiss to say that I didn't used to stand for the pledge. I didn't used to do that because I adopted these things that said to me, well, this nation doesn't welcome me here.
That's the white man's America or whatever.
Well, yeah, this nation doesn't welcome me. Well, you want to know what? This nation has made it so that people who look like me have far more than other people who look like me across the world. This nation. This nation, right? This nation has elected a black president twice that is now worth $100 million. This nation has several athletes and entertainers and different people who contribute to society in whatever way they can, using their gifts that are 9 figures and above. The amount of money being spent in the black community is ridiculous on consumer goods. So the money, the opportunities, the things are there. It's our thinking.
Even if they just spent fewer of those things on 7-Eleven based consumer goods.
And it's not just, and unfortunately it goes, we talk about this, how it goes beyond black now, it goes beyond black. But the thing is, man, it's just like our nation's history does not determine our people's future. And that's what we need to really push and help people understand that, dude. You
got a responsibility here.
Yeah, dude. Like,
At the end of the day, it comes down to personal responsibility.
Yeah.
the one thing I love about the Constitution and the Declaration is that in the Declaration, when it says that all men are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, the second that was made charter, it put slavery on a crash course to be eradicated.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Because the second you say that this is a
You
nation
say
that
all men are
stands for
created
this,
equal. Yeah.
the second you say that, you immediately become accountable to that being a reality. And that's the beauty of the Declaration and the Constitution and these things, is that no nation, and I don't know the history of all nations, but I can, it started in England.
Well, even in Canada, their free speech is like, so long as the government agrees or something. It's like I got a limited thing. It's not free.
The irony is, like, if you look at England and you look at the United States and you see how we're related in different things from history, Constitution, and stuff. England was one of the first to deal with the problem of slavery
through
Wilberforce and other people who supported him and were friends. And then you look at what happened. What other nation went to war with its own people over this cause? And there were other factors, economics and different things and political.
Barely.
But what nation do you know what nation do you know lost so much blood over this issue, right? But why did they do it? Because all men are endowed with the rights by their Creator.
Yeah.
That's why they did it.
Yeah.
And that's all. And so we're not victims. Our history isn't, our future isn't settled by our history.
Yeah.
So.
Well, and that's what my biggest fear right now is that the narrative is kind of like encouraging people to become victims, to place themselves, to identify themselves with victimhoods, whether they're trans girls, boys, whatever, or they're
boys or
black
girls,
or people of color, or they're whatever their protected class is. That it's like, okay, get your victim card and wear it around on your forehead, and it's just not good for people, in my opinion.
But I think the other piece is, though, that people who disagree with it, I think we have to be willing to, it's easy to be defiant, but it's harder to be forthcoming but loving. It's easy to be defiant and say, like, some off the handle remark. It's harder to say to someone, hey, I hear you, I feel for you, but I don't think that.
Yeah.
And here's why I don't think that.
And here's what I think is better, or whatever.
Yeah, it takes a lot of work, and it's, I think part of the problem with the conservative right side is we're like, I'm going to overcompensate with these statements and these people and
throw these grenades and call it good.
Yeah, it's both sides.
Yeah, and so, like,
agreed.
I'm not going to budge on this. Well, okay.
I hate to cut it short, but I've got to pee again, and I don't want to take another break. So we're going to jump into the loco experiences here.
All right, let's go.
And Darius, this time I'll have you go first.
Yeah.
This episode is sponsored by Loco Think Tank. Loco Think Tank provides peer collaboration for business owners. We build smart, safe places to help business leaders navigate every stage of the business journey, and we love what we do and who we do it with. Our model features give-back-minded business veterans in the role of Loco facilitators, and we're always looking for abundance-minded individuals to add to our membership, facilitator team, Loco community, or to feature on this podcast. Listeners of this podcast who go on to become members of Loco Think Tank get their 6th month of membership for free. Just mention the Loco Experience podcast on your application. To learn more, visit our website at locothinktank.com. That's LOCO thinktank.com.
You want to tell me about a crazy experience from your lifetime that you're willing to share?
Oh, man. Not really. I feel like all my crazy experiences are bad experiences, though.
Yeah, fair.
So, like, I don't have, like, outside of skydiving, I don't have, like, crazy experiences that are like, this was a noteworthy tale.
Yeah.
I have some decisions.
I had a 3-day bender after I got paid. And
no,
none of that. Yeah,
no,
we don't want to tell those stories.
I don't really want to be frank. I'm sorry. I don't want to share, like, any crazy stuff.
I don't want you to.
Because they're negative, to be honest. And I think it makes me, all my stories, I think, would potentially paint me as a victim. And I don't want to share them.
Yeah, that's fair. Do you want to tell me about skydiving?
It was a blast. I did it several times.
Good.
I love it.
Describe the experience to somebody that's just closing their eyes and just imagining it, that they're at the edge of the airplane door.
For a few seconds, it's like, if I can make a sound in the microphone that would equate to the experience for the listener, it would be like,
And then just quiet.
and then you're just taking it in. Yeah. And it's a pretty unique experience. So, yeah.
I dig it. I like it. I like it. I haven't done it yet,
Yeah.
but I want to. So
That's a trip.
that helped me. That microphone sound especially. Samson, you want to jump us over?
Kurt was with his eyes closed, like, man, a crazy story. I can tell you the story about when I knew I was going to marry my wife.
Sure.
Is that a good one?
I think so.
Okay, so I said this earlier, but my wife and I connected a lot on hard, heavy music. And if you meet her now, you'd be like, "There's no way she would listen to this crazy
She's like sweet.
screaming and
Is
just
it like Danzig or whatever?
no, more like go, like
Yeah, that's
heavy
people don't
stuff,
know-
screaming.
People don't know that about you. They don't know that
Interesting.
about you.
Yeah.
screaming and
Well, you said a punk rocker too back in the
yeah.
day.
So we connected a lot of punk and hardcore and screamo music, and so it's the very first summer we're dating, and we go to Warped Tour down at Mile High, right?
Yep.
And so we're down at Mile High, and her favorite band comes on, which at the time was a band called Thrice.
Okay.
And so Thrice comes on, and she looks at me. She says, "I got to go in the pit." I'm like, "Okay." She's beautiful and she's tough. Let's go. So she goes into the pit. She's the only woman in the pit. She's moshing, and unintentionally, she takes an elbow to the face,
Ooh.
which cleans her clock,
Right.
puts her down on the ground. So everybody runs over, tries to help her, and I'm standing on the side like, "Oh man, she just got messed up." And she jumps up and
She's
she
like, "Get off me! I need
she
to
like
get back in the
shakes her head
mosh."
and she goes, "Woo!" And she starts moshing. I slapped my buddy Dan on the chest. I said, "I'm gonna marry that woman." And that was it. That was legitimately the moment I was like, now it was early. It was early days, right? But I was head over heels for her. And then we took some time apart because she went to school in Glenwood and came back. But anyway, long and short of like,
Yeah.
that was one of those
Your
moments.
likelihood of finding another woman that could take that elbow and dust herself off and get back in the mosh.
My wife is unreal, man. She's just like, she's handy. She's artistic. She's business savvy. She's incredible, man.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, this has been a really fun conversation. I want to thank you guys for having me on. And if you're listening to Pain to Profits podcast, I think I'll be coming out here pretty soon.
Yep, absolutely.
Look for that. So thanks for having me on your show as well. And then where do people find you? What's the best, easiest way to find Clearly Acquired or Pain to Profits? Or where do you want to send people?
Yeah, clearlyacquired.com if you want to learn more about buying and selling businesses. If you're interested in listening to the podcast or subscribing to the newsletter, you can catch us at paintoprofit.co. Or
Pain with a number two?
no,
words.
T-O. But you can type all those things. We have all the variations of it.
Fair enough.
They're all forwarded. We're on YouTube. We're on Spotify. We're on Apple Podcast.
Cool.
TikTok.
Yeah, you name it. And then if you're following us on social, best places are probably LinkedIn and Twitter.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
All right.
LinkedIn. You can catch me on
Well,
TikTok.
Godspeed, gentlemen. Thanks for making the
Yeah,
time.
thanks.
Yeah,
Appreciate
it's
it,
been
buddy.
fun.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Loco Experience podcast, produced and sponsored by Loco Think Tank. This is your producer, Alma Ariano. Check out our website at thelocoexperience.com to find all of our episodes, nominate future guests, or leave us a message. You can also find us on Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn at The Loco Experience. To support the show, please subscribe and share it with your favorite people. Until next time, stay loco.